Hi, this is John Davidson from the Hollywood Squares, and That's Incredible, and Disney movies, and where else. And I love listening to the Claus Corner. It's one of the best blogs around. The guy's very clever, and I'm proud to be supporting the Claus Corner.
Welcome to the latest episode of the Claus Corner. Today's guest is a singer, actress, and author. She got her start at age 14 when she screen tested with film star Gary Cooper and has not looked back since. At age 19, she was offered an exclusive contract with Warner Brothers Studios to replace Connie Stevens as a new female lead, Sunny Day, in the television series Hawaiian Eye, which also starred Troy Donahue and Robert Conrad. She has been seen on numerous television specials, made-for-TV movies, talk shows, game shows, as well as being a member of the singing group The Four King Cousins. She is most well known as Katie Miller Douglas, the lovable wife of Robbie Douglas, in the iconic television series My Three Sons. But that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of her many, many accomplishments. She talks about all of this and much more in her recently released book, My Three Lives, a memoir. And now she is right here on my show to discuss her wild, fun life with all of her crazy adventures. So what the hell am I waiting for? Please welcome the Renaissance woman herself, Tina Cole, to the Claus Corner. Tina, how are you?
I don't know if I can live up to that wonderful introduction, but we'll try.
You know what? I've been doing a lot of research, and you could definitely live up to it.
Thank you, Rich. It's so nice to see you and talk to you again.
Yes, we met originally at Chiller Theater. It was in October, and
Yes,
it was. I got to tell you how we met, because I was going through all the rooms. I was looking for everybody, and it was almost the end of the day. And my friend goes, "Oh my God, you got to meet Tina Cole. She is the nicest person in the world." So I ran over, and you, as my friend said, the nicest person in the world. And it was funny because I've had Stanley Livingston on the show before, and we talked a lot about the show and everything else.
Wonderful.
Oh, he's a great guy.
I love Stanley.
Yeah, and it was funny because I told him, I said, I actually like the later years of My Three Sons, and he's like, "Wow, you're one of the few people that actually says that." Because I love, with you and was it Beverly Garland, and
Yeah.
well, I love those years. But but we were talking about you, and he said the same thing. It's like, Tina is the best. You got to have her on the show, and it just so happened you were there maybe a year and a half later at Chiller. So thank you very much for being on the show, because we have a lot to talk about. You have a lot to live up to.
Let's get going. Yeah, I'll try.
So as I mentioned, you're most well known for My Three Sons. So let's get that out of the way first, and then we'll go back to the beginning, find out where you are now, and then everything in between. How's that?
That's great.
All right. So as I mentioned, you played Katie, wife of Robbie, on My Three Sons. So did you have to audition for that?
Well, not really. I had an interview. I think that they had already chosen me and wanted to just meet me and talk to me about the character, because most interviews are maybe, a minute to 5 minutes long, maybe 10 if you're lucky. I was there with Fred DeCordova, who was our director. This is 5 years before he left to do Johnny Carson. Mm-hmm. And I was there for I don't know, it felt like an hour. It was probably 40 minutes or something. And he talked about, this all male show, and, this beloved show, and then this woman coming in, and how she had to endear herself to the audience, and they needed to accept her. She had to be sweet but not syrupy, and a little feisty but not bitchy. She was, and just on and on. And then I went in and had an interview with Ed Hartman, our producer. Mm-hmm. And that was another 20 minutes, half hour. And then they ushered me into another room, and there was Fred McMurray and June and his wife. And I had another interview with them. And I left with the sides. I thought I had to do a screen test like so many of the other actresses had done. I was waiting at the elevator to, with my little script in my hand, and Virginia Martindale, our casting director, ran after me and said, "Wait, you forgot to sign the contract." And I said, "What contract?" She said, "You got the part. We start shooting in a week and a half."
Oh my God. I love it. I want to talk about Fred McMurray for a second, because you said you met him and his wife. I gotta
Yeah.
say, because like even when he plays the bad guy, he's so likable. I mean, in Double
Oh,
Indemnity, he also The Apartment. I just love his like he could just. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, which I know I'm not. He seems like such a nice, down to earth guy. He seems just like Stephen Douglas.
he is. He was just a wonderful guy. I adored him.
Yeah.
I adored June. They were always so sweet to me. And in fact, um, great story is after he made The Apartment, which is, he's doing Disney, Flubber, and My Three Sons, and all these things, and he does The Apartment. And they took their twin girls to Disneyland, and this woman put her child aside, and they're like, "Now you stay here." And she walked up to him and she said, "Mr. McMurray, I took my son to see The Apartment because you were in it." And she hauled off and whacked him with her purse and said, "I will never see another one of your films."
Oh man.
And he realized then, I think, that he had kind of made his bed. No more, no more villain. He had to stick with family.
Really? Wow. I mean, that was the last time you played
Yeah.
a villain? That's,
Yeah.
it's sad because I've heard stories where somebody was having a heart attack and when George Clooney was on ER, can you help my husband? He had a heart attack. I only play a doctor. I'm not a doctor on TV. People don't, they're so hard to discern fiction from reality
Yes.
for some people. But
Oh, yeah.
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 But like I said, for me, I thought, I mean, he was a slimy character in the movie, but he's still likable to me. I just,
Still loved him. I know. I
yeah.
know.
Well, I want to talk about this because you mentioned Fred, was it, how's it pronounced? De Cordova?
De Cordova.
De Cordova. Okay, so Fred De Cordova was you were his first choice to play Katie, but you were not the first choice for Don Grady.
No.
Tell me about that.
Well, I'm glad I didn't know. I didn't know for over 2 years. I know we were kind of awkward together. Um, so the first week was all of us meeting and falling in love, with a lot of making out and smooching and all that stuff. And this one big scene where it's chaotic all around us, it's chaos everywhere. And we're just smooching on the couch. Well, we kept bumping noses, and it was like, just didn't feel right. And Fred said, "Okay, cut." De Cordova, said, "No, okay, come here, guys. Look, you gotta look like you like each other." And he said, so I want you to go in the corner. We're gonna go do another scene, and you're gonna go in the corner and practice kissing for about a half an hour, and then we'll try the scene again. So 2 years later, we actually fell in love.
Mm-hmm.
And then he told me that he really fought against me. He did not think I was the right look, the right shape, he liked surfer girls, long, thin with the long hair. And here I am, this round, bouncy thing. And he just felt it was the wrong look for Robbie. But we went together on and off and almost for like 8 years. We almost married twice.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the love of my life.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, I'm looking at the book behind you, and that's a picture of you during that time. Fred made the right choice. You are the right one for Robbie.
Yes, I was. And the thing is, it wasn't far from me. The character really was kind of the way I am, or was.
Yeah.
I still am, I guess.
Well, the question I have for you, because you were also on the show playing different characters. You played Joanne, you played Ina, and you played Sherry.
Ina.
Ina, sorry. What was the chemistry between you two when you were playing those characters?
It was just because it wasn't romantic. Well, Joanne was.
Yeah.
And by that time, that was my third role, different role. And so we were, professionals. It was fine, because mainly it was kind of farcical, like Joanne. We were pretending to be, husband and wife, what it would be like to be married. And then we had this huge fight. And so it was just, it was a business. What was interesting to me, well, it is, I think, with everybody, when you're doing a guest role, you don't really get to know the people you're working with.
Yeah.
You come in, you rehearse, you do your scenes, and you're gone.
Mhm.
And so, it was a totally different ball game when I joined the cast.
Now, was Joanne the character? I remember the episode where you had to babysit with Robbie.
That was Joanne, and that was I believe that was the episode that they used as my screen test.
I
I
was
think
going
they
to.
already picked me before I came in, but they wanted to just make sure they were right.
Yeah,
I'm so
basically a
glad they
formality.
were.
Yeah, we're all glad they were because we
Thank you.
loved you on that show. So I want to talk about the McMurray method. What is
Mm.
that? That's very interesting.
It yes, it was. They developed that for him. In those days, there were two echelons. You did movies or you did television, and you didn't cross.
Hmm.
And TV was kind of the lowly, the movie stars were here, and then TV was kind of down here. And Fred was one of the first big movie stars to make that transition because it was such a good deal. He worked the first month. So we had to have, instead of writing a show and shooting the whole show, they had to have 13 episodes. We did 26 at a year at the time.
Hmm.
A little different from the 6 and 8 that they do now. And so they had to have 13 of them already written, ready to go when we started in the spring. So we could do all of Fred's scenes and all of his two shots or, whatever's with him. And then he would work from 8 to 5 for like a month.
Wow.
And then we had to work all of our scenes and all of our close-ups, all of our other things around him. So he worked maybe, then he'd come back and do another month or so. So maybe he worked 2.5 months, 3 months to do an entire season. And it was, very lucrative for him and very easy. So it gave him time to do other things, movies, and, go up to his winery and all of that his vineyard and his ranch up in Northern California. So he established this way of shooting. We kept Polaroid in business. I wish I had stock in Polaroid
Yeah.
because we had to have a shot before every scene, in the middle of every scene, after every scene, so we could match, whatever in with the editing.
Hmm.
When came time to do the other, the close-ups. In fact, the first one that I had to do, it was really shocking. It was the scene when Robbie and Katie broke up right before the wedding. And I was in Pasadena at my aunt's house, upstairs in the bedroom crying, and Dad knocks on the door. And he says, I'm not here to, beg you to come back, but are you sure this is what you want to do? And I had real tears going in the master shot. I had real tears going in his close-up, and I'm ready to do my close-up. And they said, okay, let's go to the kitchen. We'll pick this up in a month when Fred's gone. And a month later, we had a little extra time, and they said, hey, remember that we're not going to do that close-up of Katie. And they pulled out the Polaroid and they said, this is what you looked like. This is what your hair looked like. This is what you were wearing. I mean, if you had a pimple, it better be on the same side. It was, So they set up the room, the scene, and I had 20 minutes to look at the script and try to, remember the emotion from that time. And I was doing the scene with our dialogue coach, who was a woman standing on an apple box behind the camera reading Fred's lines, and not very emotionally either.
And not the same.
No, and I don't think in my close-up I had real tears. I was really sad about that.
I have to watch the
But I
episode again
learned
now.
quickly. Yeah. I learned very quickly how to master that.
How do you make yourself cry? I'm curious. You just think of something sad that happened in your life?
Yes, pretty much. I just get back into the character.
Yeah.
I did have trouble though. I thinking it was not the Rookies. Was it the Rookies? I did Adam 12 and I think the Rookies, and in the Rookies I think I played the wife of an officer who was in the hospital, was not expected to live. I walked in, we rehearsed the scene, and I was expected to cry, and I was really difficult because there was no build up to it.
Yeah.
And so they actually had to blow some menthol in my eyes. And that's the only time I ever wasn't able to recreate it, because there was no backstory for her.
Yeah, that must be,
She
especially when
shows
they,
up in the hospital.
yeah, I was gonna say, especially when they film out of order and you're like, all right, remember what we did, like you've mentioned before, like, all right, we'll be back in a month to film the crying scene.
Yeah.
And you're in the moment, then film it now.
Exactly.
I think
But
another,
it was very successful because Brian Keith did it. That's how they got Brian for Family Affair.
okay.
Henry Fonda did it for Smith Family Goes to Washington, and John Forsythe did it for To Rome with Love. So Don Feddersen was able to get really big actors to do his television shows.
But Fred was the first one to do this.
Yes.
All right. He's a pioneer. I like that.
Yes, he is. He was definitely.
The one thing I was thinking that probably was tough because, you know, the adults are pretty much going to look the same, but Barry and Stanley are growing, so they're going to have growth spurts. Their voice is going to change. All of a sudden, he's talking to, Stanley one day. He comes back 3 months later, and he's, 2 inches taller. His voice is deeper. Did that happen? Did that happen?
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, it did. And
they-
the thing that was really hard for the boys is when the hairstyles started, for boys, the hair got longer. And, after the Beatles and all that. And they wanted their hair long. And they had to, I don't know if they ever wore a wig. I know a couple of our boys did with the King family.
Okay.
When we did one of our specials, the Georgia special, they had to wear wigs because their hair was down to here.
That's
No, that wouldn't work for the King family.
Well, there was an episode where Chip grew his hair long, and then Steven was trying to talk him out of it, and he finally cut his hair at the end of the episode. I wonder if that was one of the times that he actually drew it, and then they sort of wrote it into the episode, into the series.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. I've been going back on TV land watching all the old episodes. I love that show.
You know what makes me kind of sad too is they cut out so much of the shows to put them on MeTV or whatever, TV land. And one of the examples on our 12th season, Katie goes to work because Robbie is in Peru building an airstrip or something. And so she goes to a coffee house, and Dad and Uncle Charlie come to check it out and make sure she's in good hands. Don Grady, who was no longer in the show the last season, wrote the song for me and played it and recorded it and the background. And so I sang a song called Fountain that he wrote for Robbie and Katie. And in the show that you see on MeTV or those others, they've cut the song out.
Oh, really? I saw one. I just watched the episode because it's espresso spelled backwards. That was the name of the coffee shop.
And you know what? I think about it now, and it's so embarrassing. I said espresso. I didn't know there was no X in and instead of usurpsy or whatever the thing was. And I said, oh yeah, that's espresso spelled backwards. I don't drink espresso. So, espresso. So, and no one caught it.
Well,
and I look back now and I think that's really weird that they didn't catch that.
Well, you know what's funny about that? You know when I just found out when there's no X right now.
Oh, really?
So that's funny.
Well, I found out because fans said, by the way, they also caught, which cracks me up, Joanne wore a green dress, the Kelly green with white collar and cuffs. And Katie wore the same dress a season later.
That's funny.
I didn't know it. No one caught it,
I guess they didn't check the Polaroids.
but fans caught it.
Oh yeah. Well, I've been
They know
watching
more
it.
about me than I know about myself.
Oh
Believe
yeah.
me.
No, I'm sure when you go to these conventions, people will come up to you and tell you things like, "Wow, I never knew that. I never realized that."
And you know what? Too, they'll say, "Oh, do you remember the show when you did this and this and this, and then this happened?" Because we shot out of sequence,
Mm-hmm.
and if you were able to catch the show on prime time
Mm-hmm.
or once in the summer in the rerun, you had no idea what scenes were in or out of the shows.
Oh
So
yeah.
many of them, I didn't have the continuity of the whole show.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I'll go, no, I don't remember doing that. Did I do that?
Well, luckily everything's documented, so I'm sure fans will bring up their phone now and say, "Yep, you did it."
Oh yeah, oh they do. Believe me.
Yep. Well, I can say that I forgot. I did see that episode recently on YouTube, and they did include the song when Steven came in there to watch, and then Uncle Charlie came in. "Hey, what are you doing here? Don't tell Katie we were here." And they walk out. So the song was on YouTube. If people want to see it, check it out. And I wanted to bring that up because I wanted to know if they had a little bit of you singing, because I noticed another episode. There's an episode in the beginning of it, you sing Downtown, Petula Clark with the family. Did they incorporate singing because of your background, which we're going to get into later?
I think so. And also Frank Duvall, who was a real good friend of my family's,
Mm-hmm.
and he did the music for my three sons. So he was very aware of, the music. And my big thing on the King family in 65, our first show, was singing Downtown. That was like, in fact, I even received a proposal because I sang that song, because God told this young man that when I sang Downtown, which was his favorite song, that was a sign that we were to be married.
Oh, so how'd you turn him down?
I hope nicely. I talk about it in my book, and I do, again, I do it nicely.
Yeah, yeah. No, we're going to talk about that, how nice you are to your fans and everything, because I want to talk about what Tom Jones did for you years ago and what
Oh,
you emulate. And I can say I saw it firsthand when I met you in person.
thank you.
Yep. But before we do that, I want to still talk about my three sons for a little bit, because I was doing my research and I said I had so much fun. I want to talk about the infamous pregnancy suits.
They were amazing. They really were funny. I had we all had a quick change dressing room on the set, besides a dressing room, on the lot, where they had a bed, you could take naps if you weren't in a scene. And that's where Don, would play his piano right over the schoolroom. I'm sure Stanley told you about it, and he'd be stomping his feet,
Yeah.
and they'd have to took a broom and say, "Hey, quiet down." So up until Katie, all the pregnancies were just shown with a pillow that they would tie around the actress's waist. And Mr. Feddersen wanted it to feel real. So he had these suits designed. They were muslin, one piece with a zip up the back, like a bathing suit or a leotard kind of. And each trimester, they padded the bust line with and the belly with foam, rubber, and lamb's wool. And so each time they got bigger and bigger and bigger. And they would hang them, so we'd open up the door to my dressing room on the set. It was like the three bears were staring at you, Papa Bear, Mama Bear, and little bitty baby bear. But Don Feddersen wanted to see me the last trimester walk to see if it looked all right. So I put on my third trimester suit and a maternity dress and went up to the office and walked for him. And he went, no, yeah, it's not right. He brought it back a week later it was filled with fishing weights that were sewn into the inside of the suit with one big long fish, this, connected, these fishing weights attached to like a ribbon that I had to tuck into my bra. So it weighed a good, 15 pounds. And he said, "Oh yeah, that's much better. You look."
Yeah, yeah, for him, not for you.
But I think it was the first time they'd ever done a whole, real suit.
Yep.
That was kind of fun.
Yep. Well, speaking of first times, you and Don were quite the rebels. Let's talk about the big controversy of TV husband and wife sleeping in the same bed. God
Oh,
forbid.
did.
Whoa.
No, I know. We arrived back from our honeymoon, and we walked onto the set to do our first bedroom scene as a married couple, and there were twin beds. And Don didn't get his way with me not being his wife, but he had his way with no. It's
Right.
1967 or 8. No, when did I have the babies? Yeah, 68. And I think, yeah, 68. And 69, and he said, "We will be laughed off of television. This will not work."
Mhm.
So they had to go shoot something else while they got, I think it was it was bigger than a king size. It was humongous. And Cordova took us aside and he said, "Look, there's certain things we can do and certain things we can't. We can have you talk. You could have a little peck, a little kiss. And then at the end of a scene, you must roll over and not end the scene facing each other."
Mhm.
So we had to do that. And right before he left to produce Johnny Carson, he was doing our last bedroom scene with him. And he said, "Okay, I'm going to do something I'm not supposed to do, but I'm going to have you end the scene facing each other."
Wow.
And then he said, "It won't matter because they can't fire me. I'm already gone."
Here's Johnny.
That's right.
That's funny. Did you get in trouble for it by the censors or anything for doing
No,
that? No, not at all.
I think by this time,
Yeah.
everybody was, and look how far they've come now.
Oh my God, yeah. I think they can get away with just a little bit more than that now.
Yeah, really. And Jeannie couldn't show her navel.
Yeah.
That was absolutely, and we got, the King family got some letters about too much cleavage showing.
Oh my
I
God.
mean, our costumes were very modest
Yeah.
compared to Cher, or but yeah, we got some letters from people saying that's not quite right.
Excuse me. Well, just like All in the Family, I think that was the first show that you ever heard a toilet flush. That
Oh,
was such a big thing back then. Yeah.
heaven forbid. All we saw were stockings hanging in the bathroom.
Yeah. Well, the next question is what everybody's been dying to know. So you worked with both of them, William Frawley or William Demarest. Who's your favorite and why?
I differ from the boys
Yes, I know that.
because they adored Frawley because they were growing up with him.
Hmm.
I worked with him a couple of times, and he was, besides being a drunk, an alcoholic, he was a womanizer. He was not a really nice guy
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
Gil Demarest was, he was crusty on the outside and just the gooeyest marshmallow on the inside. And he was sweet, and he was nice, and he was just a gentle man,
Yeah.
and he loved his wife. He loved, he was a good guy.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, guys.
Nope. Well, it's funny. Years ago, I read a book on the I Love Lucy show, and I remember there was one time where
Ah,
Desi Arnaz threw him against the wall and said, "If you come on the set drunk again, you're off the show." And everybody knows that Vivian Vance did not get along with him because she thought he was way too old for her, so there was not a lot of friendliness between the two of them. But I want to
yeah.
talk about this because I heard this story, and because I know you were probably there around this time. Didn't William Frawley have Barry and Stanley go over to the next sound studio and harass Vivian Vance, who was over on that side?
Oh yeah, and I only heard the stories. I wasn't
Okay.
there at the
You
time,
weren't there.
but
Okay.
at Desilu Studios, that's where they were doing My Three Sons,
Yeah.
and they were with ABC at the time, which is also unusual. that for a show to jump ship and go to CBS. So they, Demarest had them playing tricks on Vivian Demarest, Frawley
Yeah.
had the boys doing tricks all the time, and they loved it. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
But as they got older, they'd have to go after lunch, after too many, adult beverages, they'd have to go and bring him back to the studio and sober him up. And it got to the point where the studio could not insure him, because it was, he was a time bomb waiting to go off. And so they had to let him go. And then I think he passed away a year later.
Yeah. I'm surprised. I didn't know about the insurance perp. I was actually surprised he kept getting hired, because reading all the stories about I Love Lucy, he was having the same issues. They would find him in the bar and like, where's William? Where's William? So I'm surprised that he would keep getting hired.
Taking his lunch.
Yes. Well, what's ironic about this, and I'm not sure if some of my fans know this, but you actually played Ethel Mertz in an I Love Lucy tribute show.
I loved it. It was at first it was just we're doing a girlfriend a favor. I was a member of the Cancer League in Sacramento, where I live, and my friend was heading up the fashion show and luncheon for the Cancer League, and she called me one day and she said, "Look, we're have a 50s theme going, and I'm looking for some ambiance, some characters. Could you do it like a Lucy and Ethel?" And I said, "Well, I could do Ethel. I couldn't do Lucy, but I have a friend who could do it easily." And I called my friend Judith, and Judith Favero. She taught dance and singing, and I just adored her. And I said, "You want to do me a favor? Let's do a bit with Lucy and Ethel. You be Lucy, I'll do Ethel." And she, "Oh, I could never do that." And I said, "Oh, yes, you can." And I said, "I'll do your hair and your makeup. We'll go." We went to an antique dress shop or whatever, and got the perfect clothes for Lucy and Ethel. And our bit was, we were going to come on right as the fashion show started, as if we were looking for our seats and to enjoy the show. We go up onto the ramp, and they have a little table and chair up at the end of the ramp on the stage, where we could watch the show. And then in between acts or changes, whatever, we would do bits. We just made them up as we went along. And someone came up after the show and said, "Do you hire out to do parties and whatever?" And I was not interested in doing it, but Judy really got into it. And she actually morphed into Lucy. She knew every bit, every show, all the dialogue, and she had a show written. In fact, it was for Valentine's Day. And she asked me if we're going to do a whole, like a dinner theater, whole show, and do bits from I Love Lucy. We did. She opened it with Vitamin Benjamin. Yep. And then we did, her husband actually built a whole conveyor belt, and we got See's Candy uniforms, and we used Tootsie Rolls for the chocolate. And I mean, it actually, we did, but it was all lip sunk to track.
I love it.
That was the hardest thing I have ever done, because like in the chocolate factory one, there are laughs, and all of a sudden someone will say something. So there's not, I did the same dress where they do friendship, and they start ripping all the, the things off their dresses. There's one place where Ethel says, imagine us getting the same dress at 2 different stores, and there was a beat with the breath. Well, lip syncing has to be perfect. And so, you had to listen. Somehow you had to time it with the laugh track, whatever. It was, but good lip sync is wonderful. and we got really good at it. We did shows for about 10 years.
Wow.
Ethel could not have done it without Lucy.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
but with Lucy, Ethel was a real challenge because she was very dry, and but she had that little twinkle, that naughty little twinkle.
Yeah.
She was fun. She was a really fun character to do. I enjoyed it a lot.
Did you ever meet Vivian Vance?
I worked with Vivian and Lucy
Yeah. On
on
the Lucy
one,
show?
just, yeah, and that was the only time.
Okay. The reason I ask, because I've read this story and I wonder how true it was, where she was actually very pretty and she was losing weight and they said, no, you can't look that good.
Yeah, no, she had to look older and
Yeah.
heavier than Lucy always. And that was difficult for her. Yeah, she had to look dowdy,
Yeah.
and she wasn't at all. And you know what I found out too, that I thought was very interesting, because you would think Lucy is the mother of all comedians. You know, she was just every bit. She could not do improv. Everything had to be scripted. Everything she did was planned. Every motion, every word, every look was rehearsed and planned out. It wasn't like, you know, some of these, like Saturday Night Live, some of these shows where they just, or the movies where they just let them go.
Yeah.
She
Wow.
couldn't do that.
I've heard interviews with Lucy Arnaz Jr., I mean, the daughter, and she was saying that Desi, her father, was the funny one. She says Lucy was more of the businesswoman. She's the one that took care of all that. Desi's the one that had the great sense of humor. And from what I heard, I don't know if you ever met him, because I know that, you know, they were, I think, divorced by then, but he used to be in the audience live, from what I heard. But they said that he would learn everybody else's lines, so he would know exactly what's going on. He was so
he was amazing.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's one show, just like My Three Sons. I could watch it and know exactly what's going to happen. I can never get sick of it. I laughed just like it's the first time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And you know that the King sisters, one of the movies they did was Cuban Pete with Desi Arnaz.
Oh.
Lucy. And my mom kind of played, not really a love interest, but a little bit more than just one of the singers.
Yeah.
He was, and they were because it was the King sisters, they were supposed to be Latin, or, you know, Hispanic and Cuban, probably Cuban. And so they all had to wear dark wigs. And then my mother came out as a blonde, and because they wanted to use her to stand out from the group. And they said, well, what should we call them? Well, El Rey is, well, Rey means king, doesn't it? Yes. Well, let's call them the King sisters.
You know, I definitely, really. So your mother was in the show, a love interest of Desi's in the show. Very cool. Well, what was it like? Would your mother say it was like working with him?
Oh, they loved it. They had a great time. And this is in the 40s, you know.
Oh yeah. So, which I think is funny, because like the reason they created I Love Lucy is because she wanted to keep an eye on him, because he was all over the place.
He was definitely a womanizer.
Yes.
That was very difficult. Yeah. But, you know, a lot of men were. I mean, still are, I guess.
Yes.
You know? Yeah.
Well, I want to go back to William Demarest for a minute, because I was listening to you speak about him. He is quite the Renaissance man. He did a lot, like off the air. I didn't realize that.
Amazing. You could say, bring up one word, one subject, and he could go on for a half an hour talking about it. He was a boxer. He was a promoter. He was an agent. He was in vaudeville. He was an actor. He said he made and lost 3 or 4 fortunes in his life. Very interesting man.
Yes, I had no idea. It almost reminds me of Mickey from Rocky. Now I'm seeing like boxing promoter.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no, I adored him.
Well, I mentioned earlier in the show, I mentioned Beverly Garland. She played Stephen Douglas's wife, Barbara Harper. How did she become your stepmother-in-law?
My real one.
Yes. That's what I meant to say. Your real stepmother-in-law.
My real one.
That's what I meant to say, yeah.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? She So my father was Bing Crosby's musical director and
Mm-hmm.
pianist.
Yep.
And Beverly played his wife on his television show, like right before, like a year or so before she got My Three Sons. And my dad was on the set playing live because that's what Bing wanted. And she had to sing with him. So she had this relationship with my dad that I didn't know about.
That's funny.
And she, at first, she was very intimidating for me. She was a pretty brassy woman, you know, and she knew everybody. She'd done everything, and it was very intimidating for me at first. But we became friends, and her stepson, would come to the set, and I'd go to parties at their house, like an Academy Award party to watch the Academy Awards, and he was there. And one time I got a call from Fillmore Crank. Oh, so the first time Beverly and I were in a limousine on our way to a publicity thing and just getting to know each other. And I said, "So you're married?" She said, "Yes, I'm married to Fillmore Pajot Crank, and it takes a hell of a man to live with a name like that." And that's when we became fast friends. So, it must have been after My Three Sons, so probably 72, 73, I get a phone call from Fillmore Crank Jr. And he said, "Hey, we talked for a long time." And it's like, I remembered him from Beverly's. And we were going to maybe get together, but I was really in love with Dawn. I really was not interested.
Mm-hmm.
And 4 years later, I get a phone call from Fillmore Crank. No, I get a big basket of flowers at my door from Fillmore Crank. And what is Beverly's husband doing sending me flowers? And I get a phone call, and it's Junior. Nothing happens. 2 years later, Dawn and I finally had broken up for the last time, like 2 weeks before, and I get a phone call from Fillmore. It's midnight. And he called Beverly and said, "Hey, Mom, remember Tina Cole? What's her phone number?" And her dad, he and his dad had been watching baseball or something and had a couple of bottles of wine and feeling pretty good. And he said, "You missed out with that Tina Cole." And he woke Beverly up at midnight and said, "Hey, what's her number?" He calls me. And I was Dawn had just left for New York, and I was feeling pretty despondent. And I said, he was up in Sacramento building a hotel for the family. They have the Beverly Garland in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Next time you're in LA, if you don't take me to lunch, I'll never speak to you again." And a week later, he called me and he said, "I'm in town. Let's go to lunch." And 6 months later, we were married.
Wow.
So she became my real stepmother-in-law.
Wow. That's an interesting story. But you mentioned it very briefly. So I want to talk about, first, Don didn't want you as his TV wife. Then the two of you fall in love. But you said you were not almost married once, but almost married twice. So what happened there?
When he left the show, he moved away, about an hour and a half, 2 hours away from LA. And he asked me to marry him. And I wasn't ready. I was still doing the show. I was doing the King family. My son was really happy where he was. And I just wasn't ready to give it all up and move. So I turned him down. We still dated. And finally he said, "Well, then come live with me." And I said, "I can't." Mm-hmm. And he said, "Well, I'm going to have to find somebody who will." He married for a minute, and we re-met, was it 67? I think when the King family, the Partridge family got together to do one of the first reunion shows. And it was an odd, because one is CBS and one is ABC, but they were both widows and widowers, and raised a family. So they brought us together for this reunion. And Don and I met, and I sang a song that he had written for us about the show. And after the show, he said, I made a mistake. I'll call you when I'm single. Mm-hmm. And he did. And we started going out again and rekindled. And this time I wanted to marry him. And he wasn't ready. Oh, and then 2 weeks later, Fillmore Jr. calls and says, hey. And I said, take me to lunch. And he did. And
the rest is history.
Married and I had one son, and then we had three more. Three more, another son and 2 daughters. So I have 4 kiddos and 6 grandkiddos. Was
that song you sang, was that the one entitled Story?
Yes. Right, yes. Isn't that great?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that and it still makes me weep.
Yeah.
Ron was very, very talented.
Yeah. How long I'm trying to remember. Why did he quit the show?
He had been working since he was about 12, I guess, between the Musketeers and doing some other things, and then My 3 Sons.
Yeah.
And he really, his passion was music. Mm-hmm. And he just was ready. He said, I've been doing it for so long. I need to get on with my life and really pursue my passion, which is music. So that's why he left. What was very hard is that Robbie and Katie and the triplets had just done what was hoping to be a spinoff. Mm-hmm. And he just said, I don't want to act anymore. Wow. So that kind of put a kibosh on Katie too. And it was a time really where we were so busy doing our own show, we didn't really do a lot of guest spots on other shows. Mm-hmm. It was, and it was right when Fred Silverman did everything he could. He was head of programming for CBS. Hated any of those family shows. Any of the what they call rural shows or whatever, the Green Acres and Petticoat Junction, all of those kinds of shows, My 3 Sons, Family Affair. And he wanted edgy, and he did everything he could. He put My 3 Sons at 10 o'clock at night or at, early. I mean, just every season it was a different time slot. We were still very popular. And finally he just said, well, no, we're just canceling you.
Yeah. How many seasons
did it last? Was not happy.
I don't blame you. How many seasons did it last? 12. Wow. That's really impressive.
It's still tied, actually. Well, Ozzie and Harriet had one show more than My 3 Sons. So basically, yeah, I know. We were almost tied for the longest running sitcom in history.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I still think it's very impressive.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the very beginning, far back before you were even born. I want to talk about your parents first. So you mentioned your father, Buddy Cole. That guy, I mean, your parents, your whole family is amazing. I want to talk about Uncle Jim. I want to talk about Buddy. I want to talk about your...
Oh, you did your homework. Yes, you did.
Oh, I did. So first we'll talk about Buddy, because as you mentioned Bing Crosby, but he's also a music director for Rosemary Clooney, Doris Day, Judy Garland, I'm sure many others.
Phil Harris, Marlena Dietrich, Dean Martin, you name them.
Yeah. But I want to go back to when your dad was 10 years old. I love this story.
Isn't it great?
Yep. So he's 10 years old. He loves playing the organ. He went to a silent
movie. He's never played the organ.
Yep.
He had never played the organ. His older sister played the organ for silent movies downtown in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And my dad had taken some piano lessons, and he loved the movies, and he'd go down and watch his sister play. And one day when she was not on, he went to the movies and there was no one to play. And they actually polled the audience. Does anybody here know how to play? And my dad at 10 years old said, oh, I can. I'd never done it before.
I
And
love
so he
it.
started playing for the silent movies.
He's like a young Mozart.
He was definitely a prodigy.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
then also he also played organ for 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea with James Mason. And you got a
Yeah.
chance to meet him, right? You were,
Oh, yes. Well, I was
yeah.
little,
Oh yeah, I
but
know.
he would come to we had a wonderful, fabulous music room at the back of in our backyard. We had he had built a 1,200 pipe organ.
Mhm.
And so we had the console, the 3-tier console for the organ. He had the grand piano. He had a full bar, like in a bar. It was
Yeah.
all the glass shelves and and then he had his recording booth, and people would come there to the music room and hang out after gigs, all the time. James would come to learn so he could learn how to look like he was playing the organ.
Yeah.
And he and my dad just got along so well. They decided to do some Edgar Allan Poe with James' wonderful voice and my dad's organ. And he had on both sides of the console, he had these boxes that he had made with buttons. And each one had, I don't know, 12 to 20 buttons, all different sound effects. He could do train whistles and oogas and birds and horses' hooves and, chimes and all these things. So he was able to incorporate a lot of that, like in the Telltale Heart, he could do the heartbeat, and he did the clock chiming, and they produced a few of Edgar Allan Poe's works, which are still some of my favorites of Buddy's ever done.
And you can still find the recordings.
Mhm.
I would love to hear that. I gotta check
In
that out.
fact, I've got one. I've got Telltale Heart on my phone.
All
Maybe
right. Well,
I'll see if I can send it to you.
please do. I
It
will.
really is wonderful.
You have my email address. I would love to hear that.
All right. You need to remind me after this is over, and I'll do that.
I definitely will. So I want to talk about. He also did Sound of Music, the wedding
Yes.
scene. So
And
why
I
was?
didn't know.
You didn't know that?
I did not know. No, I didn't. I was living partly in Northern California and partly in Southern. And, I didn't, well, I was young. I didn't keep
Yeah.
track of all the shows that my dad did.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And every time I saw The Sound of Music, well, he died right in 1964 before it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I'd see the wedding scene, I was like, God, it sounds like my dad. He had a very distinctive style. And I didn't find out until Facebook that he actually did that wedding scene. Well, he did the whole soundtrack too, the credits and all of that.
Wow.
But he apparently, and I found this out later, had worked, maybe 8 hours or something recording the music for The Sound of Music. And then he also was doing a Hollywood Palace with Phil Harris.
Mm-hmm.
They were pre-recorded the night he died. He had done The Sound of Music, and he pre-recorded with Phil Harris for the Hollywood Palace, and died that night. He was only 40, almost 48.
Wow, that is young.
Way too young. Yeah, it was his 5th heart attack.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was a real shock.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. What's funny about The Sound of Music is I've seen interviews where Christopher Plummer hates that movie. He has nothing good to say about that movie at all.
Oh, I've seen that too.
I know. I don't know why.
I don't get it.
Yeah. Sometimes I think that I don't know. Sometimes people that what they're most famous for, almost they feel like they hate being typecast for that. Even though I would be so grateful if I was known for one thing, I would be at every convention. I would be the most grateful, appreciative person.
Exactly.
So
Me
yeah.
too.
Well, you are. You already are. I mean, you're known for so many other things besides My Three Sons, but you're so appreciative of everything that you've ever done. I love that about you.
I am.
So let's talk about Mama. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm very grateful.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about Mama King, Yvonne.
Oh, she was
She,
amazing.
yeah, she was. I mean, your whole family is extremely talented. She was part of the King sisters. Was she an original member?
No,
No.
she wasn't. She was, so when she was 4, she was the next to the youngest out of 7. And my grandfather was a frustrated entertainer. And he taught music and only got stuck because my grandma needed to be with her mother in Colorado, who she was a midwife, and she wanted to have her deliver her babies. So grandpa, when my mom was 4, brought instruments home for all the kids. Of course, they were very disappointed. No toys, just instruments. He taught them all how to sing and dance and play and do recitations. And he packed them all up in their old Dodge touring car and took them on the road. The only money they made was passing the hat for shows that they did. They, in September, wherever town they were in, this is all in the Midwest, they would rent a house. He would start teaching music and they would go to school. And then when that was over, they'd pack them up and off they would go again. The 3 oldest girls, and the girls they loved the Boswell sisters, and they would emulate them. They would try to sing all their harmonies and things, even though it was only 3-part. Well, they were the 3 oldest girls. And like when they were doing the dishes, they would sing. They got a job on KSL radio. And this is in the late 30s or mid 30s. Horace Heidt heard them and hired them. The family moved out to Oakland, California, and the 3 sisters sang with Horace Heidt. They went on the road, and they were in Chicago at the Drake Hotel, and the oldest sister had just gotten married, and she said, I just don't want to do this anymore. I really want to be with my husband. So Grandpa King goes to Oakland High School and grabs my mom and Donna. Now this story kind of, I don't know which part is, every sister tells it a little differently.
Yeah.
This is my mother's version. He drags him. He says, your sisters need you in Chicago. Packed him up, drove him out to Chicago, and they became the 4 King sisters. And they were the first female vocal group to sing in 4-part harmony.
And wasn't she only 14 at the time?
14 years old.
Wow, that's some. So did any of the sisters have any kind of vocal training, or were they just naturally gifted?
No, naturally gifted. They
Wow.
really were. And I one of the things I think is so interesting, Dawn, when always felt a little intimidated by my family. And he said, but because they're so sophisticated. And I said, Dawn, they were little girls from Utah. They were not sophisticated. They didn't, my mother, ended up her high school at 9th grade. I mean, none of them went to college. They were from the little country towns, but they had an eye, they had an ear. And because they were all, the 4 of them together were a force.
Yeah.
And they became sophisticated, and yet, because I believe, our LDS background that kept them grounded, they never lost, they didn't go crazy. They reined it in somehow. But their taste in music, they loved jazz. And so my mother felt that they never really made it, even though they had all kinds of hit records and movies and everything. She felt they never quite made it because of the jazz background, and where the Andrews sisters and the McGuires had a hipper sound because they were also 3-part. So it was a little hipper sound, where the sisters were more jazz. And so mom thought, well, they never quite, and people beg to differ.
I was going to say, I think they did all right.
I think they did too.
I beg to differ myself.
Yeah, but she was amazing. She's in 1960. Well, so I think this is a great story too. They retired, sort of semi-retired, to get when they got married and had babies and all of that. And then they had a little resurgence. They were still doing television and some radio. When my Aunt Donna left because her husband Jim Conklin took over Columbia Records as their head, they moved to New York. So my Aunt Marilyn, the youngest, took her place, which gave them a newer, hipper sound. And they lowered the keys. They did a lot more unison. It was, again, that's still that little jazz. But Glenn Wallach said, I'm going to take some of your demos to Capitol Records. I'm not going to tell them who's singing. And he took these to Capitol and played it for the heads of Capitol Records. And they loved this sound. And we want to hire whoever it is. We want to produce their records. And he said, well, guess who they are? The King Sisters. And they they were nominated for one of the first ever Grammys for their album Imagination.
Yeah. And speaking of the Grammys, is that true that your uncle started the Grammys, or he had something to do with that?
He did. It was a brainchild. He started NARAS and the National Academy of Recording, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And he also started the Columbia Record Club. He, in those days, the LPs were 10 inches. And he wanted to put a Broadway play on an album, but it was too short. So he developed the 12-inch disc. Wow. 33 and a third, and so he could put Broadway plays on it. And so, he was amazing. And then his idea for the Grammys, he was one of the founders.
Yeah.
Of that. Yeah, he was an amazing man. He produced Nat King Cole for Capitol Records, and he discovered Bob Newhart, and
oh my God,
I mean, a lot of amazing talents. And then he was going to retire, and Warner Brothers called and said, we want to start a record label. And he said, I'm retiring, so just give us 5 years. So he started Warner Brothers, which became Warner Brothers Reprise. And he brought in the Everly Brothers, which was a really cool thing.
Oh, yeah.
And they came out with Kathy's Clown. And he sent the first 45 to my sister, Kathy. And he said, this one is for you, Kathy. She was, I don't know, I think she was probably in junior high at the time.
Wow, there's so many great stories with is there anybody in your family who's not talented? I can't imagine.
Well, we still have other talents, like we have a dentist and we have,
Oh, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I wish we'd have a plastic surgeon, but then no one ever did that.
Not yet. Not yet. There's still plenty of time.
Yeah.
Well, there's lots of firsts in your family. I mean, the King family is also one of the first. You mentioned Ozzie and Harriet before. King family is one of the first real families on television besides Ozzie and Harriet.
Yes. And especially Variety. Variety. Way before the Osmonds. In fact, George Burns and I did the first Osmond special. We were there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And before the Jacksons, before the Osmonds, we were the first. And my sister jokingly said, we were really the first reality show. Because we did on our show what we did at home.
Yeah. But luckily without all the drama of the new reality shows.
Oh, please.
Yeah, I don't even want to get into that.
We did have a little drama, but not like that.
Yeah. From the clips I saw, it looks like your family was having a lot of fun, and they still are.
we did, and we do. Absolutely. Yeah. My first cousins are still my best friends.
Yep. Well, speaking of cousins, how did the King cousins come to fruition? How did they get together?
We were doing, the King family, and NBC was going to do a summer replacement for Perry Como, the Kraft Music Hall, with John Davidson, George Carlin, Richie Pryor. They needed some girl singers. So they called the office and said, you have some girls that we, would like to join the show. And we were supposed to do one show. There were 5 of us that were available. So we went on, we did a number, and they liked us. We had such a great time, and they liked us so much, and we loved them, that we ended up doing the whole series.
Wow.
And at the end, my cousin Jamie wanted to go to college and didn't want to work. So we became the 4 King cousins. And one of the first gigs we did, we went on the road with John Davidson and George Carlin.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I met John Davidson at Chiller. He is one of the nicest, down-to-earth guys. I talked to him for a while.
Sweetheart. Yeah.
I'm trying to get him on the show. I would love to have him on the show. Seems like it would be definitely a great guest.
Oh.
George Carlin is one of my all-time favorite comedians. I saw him. I mean, I grew up with my father's records with the AM and FM and all of that, the Class Clown. And then as I got older, I would just go by myself and see. I saw him all the way up until 2008 when he died. I think he's more relevant now than he was back then. The things he said back then, I'm like, oh my God, I wish he was alive to see what's going on now.
Oh, would he have a lot to say?
Oh, he would. He always did, and yes, he would.
Yeah. What's amazing to me is Richie Pryor and George both were, they didn't do blue material.
Mm-hmm.
They were as clean cut because it was a family show.
Oh, yeah.
And they were just as funny and just as relevant, just as good with clean stuff.
Mm-hmm.
As they were when they got edgier and dirtier and
Yeah, but even when George Carlin, even when he got dirtier, he really never did it just for shock. He was just doing like the 7 dirty words you can't say on TV. He made so many great points when he used those words for what they were needed to be used for, not just to get a reaction out of the crowd. That's what made him so intelligent.
Oh yes, he was very intelligent.
Yeah,
and he was so timely. I mean, he just and just a great guy. Both of them. We'd have parties together. A lot of shows that people don't socialize, but we would have dinners. We would do scavenger hunts all over LA. We would just, it was a great group. And then Bob Banner and Ken Welch went on to do, I don't know, Banner did it, or I know Ken Welch went on to do Carol Burnett. So that crew was pretty amazing.
Yeah, so much greatness around that time. Just
I
love it. I love that whole era.
Yes,
60s and
we
70s.
loved doing the Hollywood Palace. Yeah. That was really something, because unlike Ed Sullivan, where it was just he hosted dryly, every week was a new host.
Mm-hmm.
So Bing Crosby, and we worked with George Burns, Phyllis Diller, Dean Martin,
one great after the other.
And one of the big thrills was Ray Bolger, and actually sitting with him, and they gave me the original Scarecrow hat, and we got to sing Yellow Brick Road with him.
Wow.
Just what a thrill that was.
So you have a lot of great memories.
Yes, I do.
Like I said, it's like I said in the intro, it's been a wild, fun ride for you.
Yes. Oh yeah. I think about it a lot. I was very blessed.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned Ed Sullivan. You were on his show. Is that correct?
Yes, twice.
What was he like in person?
It's just the same as he was on the show.
Okay. No, because I know all the stories about how it wasn't even really him in that part, like with the Doors, they couldn't say, get much higher and different things like that. So I know that wasn't him, but I was just wondering, like, was he really that conservative off the air, or was he just like he was on the show?
Excuse me. I don't know, because excuse me, that's my puppy is Daisy. Hang on.
No problem.
Hey, Daisy. Quiet, darling.
Everybody wants to be on the Claus Corner.
Yeah, it's right. Um, so we really, again, we didn't get to really know, he
Yeah.
did the show. He had so many guests and he'd just show up and introduce us.
Yeah.
So we didn't really get to know him.
Yeah.
Um, Again, he was just dry and, he just was at Sullivan Island.
What I love about that show is you could have musicians, plate spinners,
Exactly.
everything, anything possible. It's almost like the
Was,
pre-Gong show.
what
I
was
love it.
uh, Joe, Gigo.
Oh,
What was his name?
I don't know. Go. I know what you're talking about.
I mean, yeah.
Yes, that's showing everybody.
Oh, they had everybody. And at that, of course, Hollywood Palace. What cracked me up, my sister was reading Keith Richards' book,
Hmm.
and he talks about the Stones doing the Hollywood Palace for the first time. And he said, here we were with the bouffanted kings, Tina and Bertha the elephants, or Bertha and her daughter Tina the elephants, or something. So we were mentioned in Keith Richards' book.
Wow. You also met the Beatles, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
I got to hear about this.
I did.
Beatles are my all-time favorite group. So
Me too. I think they were just amazing. And I've used that word too many times tonight, but it's so appropriate. When Hard Day's Night came out, I was absolutely crazy about John Lennon. I didn't have a lot of movie star crushes or anything, or teen, that. But there was something about John Lennon, and I think I saw Hard Day's Night like 10 times. And my Uncle Jim and his family were invited to a garden party. The guests were the Beatles. It was for the Hemophiliac Association. Mr. Livingston's son was afflicted with that. And so they were doing a charity event for the artists from Capitol Records and their kids. And I went with the Conkling because I was living with them at the time. And I was so excited because I just thought they were fabulous. And Brian Epstein, right?
yes, the man,
Yeah.
Brian Epstein.
I keep going, okay, there's too many Epsteins around. I'm going, okay. And
He's the other Epstein.
Really, he's a good guy. Came up to me and they had lemonade and cookies. It was very lovely.
Yeah.
And he came up to me, gave me a card, which I can't find.
Ugh.
4 guys and their autographs, and on the back was an address and a phone number. And they said the boys would like you to come to a party at their house tonight. And oh, how nice. They'll send a limousine. And I thought they were going to be, the 4 of them are going to be in the limousine to come get me. No, it didn't happen. But it was quite a night. It was a real eye opener for me. And I want to give it away because you got to read my book.
Yep. No, this is just a teaser to buy the book.
Oh yeah. But it was an interesting night. It was an eye opener.
Well, I got to tell you a funny story because I know it relates to something that happened with you. I interviewed a woman, it was a husband and wife, and they knew the Beatles back in the days. Like her husband played with the Beatles when Pete Best was still in the band. He didn't play in the Beatles, but his band played in that time period back at the Cavern. And so she dated Paul McCartney and George Harrison. But she said, and this is funny because you're going to relate to this one because you did something with this on one of your TV shows. I think it was Hawaiian Eye. She went to the movies with him. She puts on her glasses and he goes, "Oh, you wear glasses? I don't like women with glasses." And he broke up with her.
That's right. Because men didn't make passes at girls who wore glasses.
Yes. And I think there was was it Hawaiian Eye where you really couldn't
I put my glasses on to get my information into focus.
I love it.
Yeah, that was fun.
I want to go back to the King Cousins for a minute. There was the reunion show. So the group was singing the song God Only Knows. And that night you were not alone. Who were the 2 angels, or who were the angels that appeared with you on that show?
Yeah. that was really something. I was told um, in a blessing that angels would be attending, that our mothers would be there.
Mhm.
We were really nervous. It had been 30 years since we'd sung together, and the place was packed, the Catalina Jazz Club in Hollywood. And I was really a good, strong lead singer. We had to lower some of the keys because they didn't have some of the notes. And I was nervous. And I said, "Don't worry, your moms are going to be there." And I after the show, my girlfriend had been taking snapshots of every number. And after the show, we were looking at, she was showing me the snapshots. And when it came to, and we sang God Only Knows. I think it was a wonderful arrangement.
Mhm.
And we did it with video, with our parents, with the King sisters, the family behind us. And looking at all the pictures, they were clear. Every picture was clear as a bell. God Only Knows was not clear. And it had on the stage, it was like auras, like 8 auras. We weren't even clear. And where my mother normally stands next to me, or we stood in the same place with the group, was a big cancer ribbon that was like bright, brilliant, pink, gold, whatever. And it stood out. And my mother had breast cancer. And I looked at this picture. I carry it with me. I have a copy of it, and I carry it with me every day in my date book.
Wow.
I know they were there. My kids were in the audience, and they said, I was telling them about this that night, and they said, we felt arms go around us. Each kid was there, and they said the same thing. They didn't confer with each other. They all said the same thing, that they felt this presence. And then my cousin's daughter, who was very in tune with spirits, the spirit world, I guess you could say, said she saw oh yes, they were there. They were with you on stage. I saw them.
Wow. What year was that?
I show this picture, and I wish the pictures were in color in my book, because I have the picture in the book, and you can get an idea, but I wish you could see it in color.
Yeah.
It's really very, very touching, and I really felt a spirit that night. It was wonderful.
No, I'm going to use that word. That's definitely an amazing story.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I want to go back to the beginning of your career now.
Okay.
So first of all, did your parents ever discourage you from getting into the business?
My father.
Your father did?
No, he really did not want me to. He didn't think it was good. My mother loved it.
Yeah.
And but I never thought about it. I never was encouraged or taught.
Yeah.
I fell into it and was discovered, and they wanted to screen test me, and they called my mother, and she said, "Sure, it's fine with me." And so it just, they said, "Well, we like you. The camera likes you." And of course, when Gary Cooper walked into my screen test, I had no idea who he was. He was an old man. And, I'm 14 years old. What do I know about movie stars?
Yep.
But they liked me enough that they asked me to come every summer and study with their drama coaches at Warner Brothers. So for 4 years, every summer I'd take a month and go and study with them. And I was talking to my high school friends. I have several that I'm very close with. And I said, did I ever tell you what I was doing on my summer vacations? And they said, no. Why wouldn't I be excited? Why wouldn't I have said, you won't believe what happened to me? And like the Everly Brothers were in the class, Max Baer Jr. I'm trying to think, I can't even remember some of the names because I was young.
Yeah.
And it just was fun. I love to go play in the streets, in the sets. That was the most fun.
Well, I think it was fun. Plus, also probably wasn't a big deal for you because you were always surrounded by it.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
the commonplace for you to see, James Mason come over to the house, all these different people. So you're like, just another day, just another summer for me. For everybody, for me, it'd be like, oh my God, I had the most amazing summer. For you, you're like,
Oh yeah.
I call this
So,
Tuesday.
I remember when we were in Las Vegas. I can't remember how old I was. My sister and I were visiting my dad with Rosemary Clooney, and every day she would get a massage. And I remember sitting, cross-legged on the floor as she's getting this massage. And I thought, boy, someday I'll know I'm a big lady when I can get a massage. I thought that was so cool.
That's when I made it.
My sister and I thought, oh, this is great. So we decided, we made a little sign and we walked around the pool at the Sahara or wherever we were, and said that we offered massages for 50 cents. And Tony Curtis bought a massage.
I love it. That's funny. What's funny is that you never, as you said, you were never encouraged or discouraged, but
No.
being in film, TV, theater was never a dream. What was your dream?
I wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah.
I wanted to be an elementary school teacher. That was, and I have done that throughout my life. I've taught in many different situations, and just working with kids is my favorite thing in the whole world.
Yeah. Well, there's a great story. We're going to get to that in a little while because I love that story.
You really have done your homework.
I have done my homework. So let's go back to your first screen test with Gary Cooper, because you're just like your mother, you're age 14. And let's see. So was it with your Warner Brothers?
Warner
Studios? And
that was because of my Uncle Jim.
Yeah. So so let's get into that. So he was doing a song, I think, and he wanted some dancers for the song.
What happened was, I think it was Bourbon Street Beat was one of the series. And the producer had written a rock and roll song. Ooh. And he wanted to use it in his show. And rock and roll was really new, brand new. And he asked Jim in the record department to see if one of his arrangers could do it and bring it over for him. And Jim said, well, it really is it's a teenage medium. But I've got some teenagers at home. Why don't I give it to them and let's see what they can do with it. And I apologized to the producer. It was a terrible song. It was heel to heel, toe to toe, and soul to soul. That was the name of the song. I can't remember the tune, but
how did that never become a hit?
I know, exactly. So he gave it to four of us, and we did an arrangement of it. We made up a dance. We sang it.
I love it.
And we brought it to Warner Brothers. We did it for the executives, for Bill Orr and Hugh Benson and Jim Phillips and the producer and the other people at the lot. And we just were doing, our uncle a little favor. And we started to leave, and they asked me to stay. And in a few minutes, they brought me into the main office, and more men kept coming in, and they, put your hair up, put your hair down, smile, turn, let me see a profile, walk around, sit. And they asked me to wait, and I did. And that's when they said, we'd like to screen test you. So they called my mom. And a few days later, I was, in makeup and hair and all that. And we just did a personality test. And that's when Gary Cooper he was a friend of the director's,
Yep.
and they were going to go duck hunting afterwards. So he was in jeans and a flannel shirt and a scruff beard and wire rim glasses before John Lennon made them popular.
Yep.
And he comes walking, ambling into the scene. I had no idea who he was. I didn't wow them, but that's when they said, well, we like you enough, come study. So when I was 19, I had finished one year at college at Brigham Young University, and I was working a semester, and my first job as a receptionist,
Ooh.
an optometrist's office, and making, $49 a week, saving up to buy a used Volkswagen. And I get a call from Warner Brothers, and they said, we'd like you to come down and screen test for the female lead in Hawaiian Eye, which happened to be my favorite show.
Mm-hmm.
And I adored Connie Stevens. I mean, like the whole show. And they called like on a Monday or something. And I said, well, my day off is on Wednesday. I could come down then. And they called my mother, and she said, no, you're getting on a plane tonight. And 3 weeks later, I was in Hawaii, in my own suite, overlooking Waikiki, the female lead in a major television show.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about how you got that show, because you mentioned Connie Stevens, and there was an issue with her which had the opening for you to take over that role. What happened there?
This is what I was told, and Connie, forgive me if this is not the way.
And if you're watching, Connie, be on the show. Come on my show.
Yeah, really. Cricket was a very, very popular character. Mm-hmm. Her character in Hawaiian Eye, and Warner Brothers was going to do My Fair Lady, and so I was told this by the heads of Warner Brothers. That's all I know.
Yep.
And that Connie said, she went up to them and she said, I want the role of Eliza Doolittle. And they said, no, we're talking to Audrey Hepburn, And she said, well, and she thought she had enough leverage that then I won't do Hawaiian Eye. Well, she was a contract player. And in those days, the studio owned you.
Oh, yeah.
So she was put on suspension for 6 months where she could not work anywhere at all. Wow. And they needed someone to come in. They still wanted her back. So, and I don't think I was a threat at all. And they gave me a different character. So that when her 6 months was up, she came back and became queen. And I was, reduced to the lady in waiting.
So at least they kept you on the show, though.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
that was a different character. And I sang, in the show bar. I mean, did all those things that she did.
Well, you were also in the movie Palm Springs Weekend with her. Did you ever have a chance to talk about that with her? Was there any animosity?
Yes. No, not at all. Not at all. It's, she was the queen bee, and that was fine.
Yeah.
I worked with her, and we knew some of the same people over the years. Very nice, very bright woman. Yeah. And we had our musical director was her musical director, later in variety, when we were doing shows, in theaters and whatever. So there was never any problem.
That's good.
Yeah. And what happened is Jack Webb came in and took over Warner Brothers and got rid of all the contract players. That had been a staple in all the studios. And that, it was grooming young people to be the stars of tomorrow. And they took a chance on these young people. And so they did a movie called Palm Springs Weekend and put all their contract players in it.
Oh, yeah. Well,
that was our last hurrah.
I want to go over just some of the people in that movie. I had to write this down because it's so amazing. I can't imagine having a movie with this many famous people in it because they wouldn't be able to afford it with the budget. You
Oh,
had Troy Donahue, Connie Stevens, Robert Conrad, Stephanie Powers, Jerry Van Dyke, Jack Weston, Billy Mooney, Dawn Wells, Ron Howard, Mel Blanc, and there's even more. I just couldn't have room. I didn't have room on the paper. There were so many people in that. It was almost like it's a mad, 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 mad world with all these different stars
exactly.
in there.
Oh yeah,
I
it
love
was.
it.
They got, that was their last hurrah for their contract players. And I didn't know. I just, accepted a contract. I didn't have an agent. I didn't know you needed an agent. So I didn't get credit in the movie.
Oh,
I was on the poster, but I didn't get credit in the movie because I didn't have anybody to negotiate for me.
it's just
I
so
didn't
amazing
know
you
what
did all
that
this work.
was.
Yeah. I mean,
And, my 3 sons, I didn't have an agent.
wow. It's
You know.
amazing that you got so much work and you so successful on your own.
Mm. Well, I made some mucho big mistakes.
We all do. But did you finally at one point did get an agent later in your career?
I tried, a few,
Okay.
but again, I didn't know. I give me a script and I could do it.
Mhm.
But the business of the business, no one ever guided me. I did not know what I didn't know to ask.
Yeah.
So I was really ignorant. I just kind of was like this little rudderless rowboat that just someone said, "Oh, here, come do this. Okay, come over here." And I wish I had some education
Yeah.
in the business. Even Bernie Brillstein wanted to manage me, and he had a hard time getting anything for me. There was a point when My 3 Sons ended, when Silverman only wanted, All in the Family, shows like that. If you didn't have a speech impediment, or you were, the All American pretty blonde girl was
Yeah.
out,
Hmm.
and I couldn't get arrested. And not until Charlie's Angels, they finally brought back that kind of all American look.
Yep.
And so it was difficult, and I did not know how to navigate the business world.
Hmm.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you did have a lot of great shows that you were on. We mentioned the Lucy Show. You were on Adam 12, The Rookies, and then you had another one called was it Eleanor and Franklin. So you definitely without an agent, you did very well. I mean, I could picture if you did have an agent, you would be all over the Love Boat, Fantasy Island. I could picture.
I wish, had I known. I wish I
No,
had known.
I know.
But I didn't, and I didn't do badly. When I got a call from Photoplay magazine, and it was like the People's Choice Award at the time.
Hmm.
And they said that I had won the Most Promising Actress award. We didn't do big award shows then. We even, did the Emmys, and it was a little banquet room in a hotel. It was
Yeah.
just nothing. But they gave me the award on, I think it was Joy Bishop's show.
Yeah, it was.
And I know Lee Marvin was there representing Cat Ballou. It was Glenn Ford, Paul Newman, Carol Burnett. I'm trying to think. Barbara Stanwyck.
Oh my God.
Nicole. It's like, and they showed me a piece of paper, and they said, "Look at the names on this list. All of these, and this is, I don't know from how long, the 20s, 30s till the present. Every single name on this list of the most promising actresses have all gone on to win an Academy Award. Don't let us down."
No pressure at all.
Yeah, well, I guess, they still need grandmas, right?
Yeah, look. I
It
heard you
ain't
mention
over. The fat lady hasn't sung.
exactly. I think I heard you mention you would love to play a grandma on the Hallmark Channel. Why not?
Yeah, no, come on, Hallmark.
I know. I'll see if I'll put my feelers out there. See if I can get some know any people there.
Really,
I would love to see you on that. I think you'd be great.
I'm such a perfect Hallmark person.
Oh my God, yeah, I could definitely picture that.
Mayor, the shop owner, the teacher, the whatever, the grandma.
You could do it all. You're very versatile. I love that.
Right.
Well,
And I'm not too proud. I can be, I could get really ugly sometimes. I could really get, I could be a homeless person.
what was your
Not that
most?
they're ugly, but
No, I know what you're saying, but that's you bring a good point. What was your most demanding role that you ever played? Something that was out of character, not like Katie Douglas, not who you said was basically you.
oh, I never did play. I wanted to play. In fact, I auditioned for a part. Oh, it was every bad thing you can imagine was in this character. And the casting director said, "You know what, Tina? No, you can't. You can't do it. It wouldn't be right for you to do." So really the hardest character really was Ethel.
Really? Wow.
That was really the hardest, the most challenging.
Hmm.
Yeah, because I had to mirror her completely.
Yeah, I could definitely imagine that.
That really was hard. I had to do the little pin curls and so
All right, so Ethel Mertz it
and
is.
that dry delivery that she had that was brilliant.
Oh yeah, no, I love Vivian Vance. Like I told you, I saw a documentary and read so much about the Lucy Show and I was reading all about Vivian Vance and everything she had to go through, and I just love her.
Yeah,
I
me
think she
too.
was extremely talented and underrated.
Very, very underrated.
So
Yeah.
you were at this time, top of your game, you were doing all these shows. When did you decide to take a break and say, I'm not going to be in front of the camera for a while? Like, when did it just drop off for you for a little while?
Really, when I got married,
Okay.
and because I really my my whole thing, I wanted to be a wife and mother.
Hmm.
That was the ultimate to me.
Yeah.
And Fillmore Jr. was in Sacramento building a hotel for the family,
Hmm.
and we commuted for 2 years after we got married. And economically, the country was in a world of hurt in 78, 79.
Oh yeah.
With and Carter was in, and the interest rates were up to 22.5%.
The energy crisis. I remember
Oh,
it so
yeah.
clearly.
Every other day you could get gas.
Yeah, that's what's funny. I was just gonna say that. My mother does not remember that. I remember
Oh,
that. And she goes, how do you remember that? I said, remember they had to go by your license plate and all right, well, it's an even day or even number, so you can go on Tuesday and Thursday. If it's an odd
yes.
number, Monday, Wednesday. I remember
And
that
people
very
weren't
clearly.
traveling because they
Yep.
couldn't get gas. And so the hotel business was hurting.
Yeah.
And besides, we had the hotel was almost built, and we had 350 rooms, but we didn't have any doors. We could not get the doors because the product, it was like, they're out in a freighter somewhere.
Hmm.
They couldn't afford it because the prices went up so high. It was just terrible. So we got married commuting. He was going to just get the hotel up and running and then go back to LA and continue managing the hotel there. Couldn't get it done. And he finally came to, we had one son, and he said, yeah, Paj was like 6 months old or 5 months old. He said, I know I said I wouldn't move you, but we have to live together. It's a little different than they do now.
Yeah.
So I moved to Sacramento,
Hmm.
and I tried to go down and do a little thing, but I had 3 children in 4 years. And so it was a little difficult. And I loved, that's what I wanted. I wanted to be a wife and a mom.
Okay.
So, I actually took over running the restaurant and the hotel for about 5 years, which was a whole new ball game for me.
Yeah, I can
I
imagine.
did a lot of charity work. I did. So I was doing shows. I was doing things here,
Yeah.
but it was all charity.
Yeah.
So I couldn't keep my hands in LA.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about how you made your mark in Sacramento in a minute, but I want to ask you one question before that, because I want to talk about how Facebook got you back in front of the camera.
That was pretty amazing because
Yeah.
Facebook was a new thing. And oh, Facebook, I can't, I'm not going to do that. Why do I want to do that? And a fan started a Facebook page for me. And when, I took over, it was like, suddenly, it was like every day there were people that said, where have you been? We loved you in the show. We miss you. What are you doing? And I started engaging.
I love that.
And just within a few years, it just blossomed. And it felt so good to have people remember and to hear comments about how my character or the show. I mean, I was in 2 really positive family shows. I never did a show that I was embarrassed to say I was on. And because the King family, we did a lot of one-nighters, for 8 weeks at a time, we'd go out. And so I got to meet a lot of the people around the country. And it really did change my life. It gave me a whole new life.
Yeah.
So when my husband left, and when my baby was 8, and so it was, and it's not something that, you can't make a living acting in Sacramento. You do that for the love of it. And I had children in school. It was not something that, I could just pick up and go to Los Angeles. And I'd been out of it for so long.
Yeah.
And so I just got a little puppy love from the lady here. So through Facebook, it's revived a whole career. I do autograph shows, wrote my book because fans said, please write, we love your stories, please write a book. I wouldn't have done that if, in fact, Debbie, who you've talked to, just thought, in fact, she said, okay, you're going to write your book. And one day in the mail, she's in Los Angeles, and I got a little voice recorder in the mail from her. And she said, we're going to start, my girlfriends got together, my egg girls, we call ourselves. And they would call, and they had a list of questions, and I would answer. They would talk to me, and I would answer the questions on the voice recorder. And then I would send the files to Deb, and she would type them up and send them back to me. And, a couple of years, we had a whole story. And I mean, it's a joke that I can't even write a grocery list. So, this was quite a feat.
I can imagine.
The encouragement from the fans and from my friends and not really the family as much, because I think they all knew I couldn't write a grocery list either.
Was there anything that they did not want written? I mean, I can't imagine from the stories you're telling me that nothing would be really not. I mean, you could tell me. Was there anything that you talked to them? You're like, I can leave this out of the book if you want.
Yeah, actually, I did. I sent the chapters about my marriages to my kids. I was married twice. And I said, if there's anything in here that you don't want me to say, or that, I made a promise that I would not be subjective. Maybe that's not the right word, but I had to tell the facts.
Yes.
but I would not. I mean, I got 50 pages of icky stuff that no one wants to read.
Hmm.
I took it out of my conversations, the files, and I still have them on my computer. So if someone really isn't happy with what I wrote, I can say, well, look what I left out.
You know what? Can you send that to me with the Edgar Allan Poe recording?
Really,
I want to read
exactly.
this.
Yeah, that's the good stuff. But I asked my children to please, to read them and really be honest with me,
Yeah.
because I don't want to hurt anybody, but I had to tell my story. And I said, why would I write? Because, you know, I never had, yeah, everybody gets depressed, but I didn't have an eating disorder. I wasn't a problem with alcohol or drugs or, anything like that.
Yeah.
Um, so why would anybody want to read my story? It's boring. And
See, that's where you're wrong. It is. I think it's fun. That's the reason I love your story, because it's not filled with drama. It's not filled with tragedy. It's filled with just fun stories, meeting great people, amazing life, and that to me, I'd
uh,
rather read that, see that, than hear about like somebody's. I mean, I feel bad for everybody, things that people have gone through, but
yeah.
I love a fun, successful story.
Oh,
That is you. That's the Tina Cole life right there.
thank you. Thank you. And you have to tell, I mean, you climb out of muck. We all do.
Oh yeah.
Hopefully we do. And, I've certainly had those times which I needed to say, but I don't need to disparage anyone. I don't need to hurt anybody. Um, I realize, well, everybody's got a story about, their husband cheating on them, or or falling into the depths of this or that. I tell what happened from my point of view. It's like in my uh, introduction or whatever, and my dedication. I said,
Yeah.
the best of my recollection.
Yeah.
This is my story.
That's why I sort of hate those books when the children will write the story after the person dies.
Oh,
Say Michael Landon's one, and obviously Mommy Dearest is the biggest one. But
yeah,
so I mean, so like when people do that, and then the other person they can't defend themselves. They can't say, no, this is my side of the story. So I think it's unfair.
yeah,
So after the person's dead, then they have their chance to write their story. Even Mackenzie Phillips wrote one about John Phillips, and she said a lot of.
yeah. I know. I read it.
Yeah. Okay. So.
I've read several where I wish they hadn't.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't need to know how many men wanted to sleep with you.
Including your father.
Know how drunk you got and the parties.
Yeah.
I don't want to know that about you. I like the image
Yeah.
that I have of you. I don't want you to ruin it.
Yeah. Well, it's like I met Mackenzie. She was one of the nicest people I met. I
Isn't
love
she
Mamas and the
great?
Papas. Oh, she's great. Yeah. So it's like what you just said. It's like it didn't ruin the image for me, but it's like I really didn't have to hear those stories.
Yeah, I know, and she went through a lot. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, she definitely did. Yeah. And I'm a huge fan of Mamas and the
oh,
Papas. Michelle
oh,
Phillips, John. So it's just reading all that. It's like I'm not surprised, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I was thinking the other day about parallel universes
Mm-hmm.
that the King family, my three sons, 60s, what was going on
Mm-hmm.
in the 60s.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I lived on Laurel Canyon. I mean, I was right there.
Oh, you know
I
what?
was in Laurel Canyon every day. But it was like parallel universes. We were popular. We were doing all the shows. We were doing all this, but we didn't mix. It was like I said, parallel universes. And we were right there at the same time, but they were totally different lives.
Well, what's funny?
Crazy.
A couple years ago, I'm sure you saw this. There was a documentary. Was it Jacob Dylan that did it? It was about something in the
Yes.
canyon. I
Yes.
love that documentary. So what was
Oh,
perfect about that was right after that came out in the theaters, I was in California. I did a Laurel Canyon tour, and
Oh, yes.
and the best part about that was I just saw the movie, but the guy that was running it was this old hippie, but he was great. I forgot. I think his name of the place that he ran was called the Hippie Hideaway. But he was all talking about the geography and the beautiful canyon. I said, well, "What about this? What about that?" He goes, "Wow, I should have put that in my tour. This is really interesting." I was telling him more stories about the tour than he was.
Oh, yeah. We used to hang out at the general store all the time.
Yes, that's where
Always
Mama
were.
Cass lived.
Yeah. Well, we all did.
Yep.
But I didn't, but my paths did not, outside of maybe doing a show, our paths did not cross. We were not, because we were not into that scene.
Yeah. Yep.
It was, yeah, isn't that crazy? That was right. We were right there.
Oh yeah. No, and I didn't. I actually interviewed Stanley Livingston 3 times, and we didn't get a chance to talk to him. But I think he lived in Laurel Canyon as well.
Yes, he did.
That was the next chapter of our interview. We didn't even get to that far
It was
yet.
fun because you could see his beautiful stained glass work, as you drive down the canyon.
Yeah. I love the history of that. I mean, you had the Beach Boys right next to the Beatles, and you had Frank Zappa, you had Eric Clapton. Everybody was there.
Everybody.
Oh, I love it.
There, I mean, they were all there.
Yep. I think I saw Betty Davis's house as well back in the day. She was there.
Oh my gosh. Love it.
Well, it's funny because you were talking about the book, but your mother actually wanted to write a book as well called My Life with Tina.
No, Life with Tina.
Life with Tina. Okay. Life with Tina. Okay.
Because, and one of my favorite stories that I left out, I don't know how I left that out, but it was usually when I talk about Life with Tina, one of the things she started out with was, and I'll do a talk, I'll do a lecture or whatever. And I always start out, I was a natural born entertainer. And I talk about my history and whatever. And say my first time I was, that I can of course, my mother is the one that told me the story because I don't remember. I feel like I remember because of her stories. The little kids, and I can't believe I left this out of the book. This is my favorite story. I was like 3, and all the little kiddos were going to sing some special songs for our fathers on Father's Day in church. We were all in the foyer getting ready for our music to start, that we'd walk into the church and get up on the, on the pulpit and sing our songs. And I had to go to the bathroom so badly. I just ran to the ladies' room. I'm sitting there and I hear the music start. And oh my gosh, I run back in. Our first song, all these little kitties up there, our first song was a song called I'm So Glad When Daddy Comes Home, Glad as I Can Be. Something, da, 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 and clap my hands and climb upon his knee, put my arms around his neck, hug him tight like this, pat his cheeks and give him what? A great big kiss. Mwah! And I had my panties in my hand.
Oh, I love that story.
And that's what was going to start my mother's book, Life with Tina.
What stopped her from writing it?
She died.
Okay, well that would.
Oh, no, I found stories, tucked away in a notebook, but she was, she died a month before her 90th birthday. So
wow.
She had a very wonderful life.
I was going to say, your father made it to almost 48. Your mother made it all the way to 90.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you have your mother's genes when it comes to longevity. And I think you obviously
I hope so. Because I feel pretty good.
Yes, and you look great. And
Thank you.
I know 20-year-olds that can't keep up with you.
Well, that's true. I have enough energy, and I pray about it every day. Please keep me going.
Well, I mentioned Facebook earlier. One of the things that you did get from Facebook back in front of the camera was a movie called See Me. Let's talk about that. It was a short.
Yes, and that's Debbie that I've talked about, that you've talked to.
Yes.
Was going to produce a short. It was about burn victims.
Mm-hmm.
And her daughter is an actress who's been, Stephanie Brass has been acting since she was like, doing Pampers commercials when she was a baby. And she was going to play the lead, a survivor of a fire. And Debbie and her twin sister were going to do this production. And they said, wouldn't it be fun? I wonder what Tina Cole's doing. And she gets on Facebook. And I meet her. And, I'm thinking I want to start getting back into acting. I would love to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I met her in Los Angeles and her twin, Donna, and the director. And we decided, this is a project I'd like to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I did the film with her. And we have become dear, dear friends ever since.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really my first time back on the set in a long time. And it felt so good.
Good to be back.
Felt like home. Yeah.
What year was that?
Oh, 2013.
Oh, wow. So it's not that long ago.
Yeah. And they changed the part from Stephanie's mom to the grandma.
Uh-huh.
So I played the grandma.
And that's probably what made you win the Vanguard Award. Is that correct?
That's right. Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah, because I've been around, for 50 years. So.
Yep. Well, so tell me, like I said, when you moved from LA to Sacramento, you definitely made your mark. So I want to talk about the Sacramento Children's Theater.
Oh, that was one of my greatest joys in my life. It was by the time COVID hit, which ended it, it had been 83 years of consecutive years of free musical theater for children.
Wow.
Kindergarten through third grade. It was a field trip. During the war, it became a puppet show, or it was a traveling show, but it was consistent for 83 years. And they were original musicals. Every musical had a lesson, had a moral, and the kids would get a song. They would get a curriculum guide, and they would learn the song. It was all interactive with the audience. And so when they asked me if I would direct, I was thrilled. I directed for, I think it was 23 years, and then COVID did it.
Never came back?
Broke my heart, never came back.
No, sorry.
But it was pretty amazing. We had, it was all volunteer cast from the community. Started out with the Junior League in Sacramento. And so it was one of the committees that they would do if they wanted to act, try their hand at acting. And there were some gals that said, oh, well, I just want to work backstage. And I said, well, let's try. Or, oh, I could never sing. Well, come on, let's just try, And I met some of the most incredible women they just donated their time. It was a 3-month commitment. We rehearsed, we had auditions, then we rehearsed for like 4 or 5 weeks. And sometimes we did 2 shows a day, one at 9 and one at 11.
Mm-hmm.
And they bust the kids in, and we would sometimes perform for over 2,000 children a day for a month or 5 weeks. And it was my favorite thing I think I've ever done.
I know it's children's shows, but what kind of shows did you do?
They were original. The last 4 were the best. I think they were written by Gail Halverson, and who's an amazing talent. She wrote the book and the songs, and I worked with her, in the production value of it. We originally had a live pianist, and so the kids would go down to the pit. They'd get to see the pianist doing her thing, and
I love it.
And we would sometimes they would we'd let them backstage so they could see all the, the magic. And one was, actually was a takeoff on, do you remember the children's book, Are You My Mother?
Oh yeah.
It was a takeoff on that, and we called it Little Bird, and it was just adorable. And the kids, it was always ended up being a chase in the audience, and the kids would be screaming and yelling and rooting for the good guys. One was called The Tail Spinner, and it was all about reading, and what it encouraged kids. It started out with two little kids playing their video games, and then the power goes out, and then what are they going to do? And then they meet the tail spinner, who tells them about reading. She's like the good fairy from Disney. And so we did a story about aliens, and we did a story about pirates, and we did a love story, a ballet, and how the kids, the grandma says, hey, you want to play your games? No, I think we'd read a book. We'd rather read a book. There's one about art that we did, about a little mouse that stows away in a crate from Paris. It comes to a museum and saves the day when the painting, something is destroyed in the painting, and the little mouse, it doesn't matter that he's little, because he has talent and he believes in himself. It's just wonderful, about friendship and about honesty and about hard work, and things that kids would get this information through the story and through song, and they wouldn't even know that they were getting taught anything. They were, and the costumes were very simple, but just great. Yeah.
I can hear and see the passion in your voice. So I can see how much you were into it. And I love that. Like how much it was a part of you.
Oh, so much. And I really miss it.
All right. Well, I mentioned this earlier, and I want to bring it up now. How did your dream of becoming an elementary school teacher come true in 1991, when the music program was cut for children ages kindergarten to third grade?
Yeah, we couldn't do without music. So I asked another mother if she wanted to work with me, and we took over the music program for kindergarten through third grade. And we developed our own curriculum guide. I came up with this idea, and she loved it, and we put it together. She could play keyboard. I couldn't. I can't play anything. I used to play auto harp and a little guitar and some banjo every now and then, but I haven't played in a long time. Although I did play auto harp at Christmas for a show. I actually did. But I made these, I got these big felt, like a white strip of felt, and I put black felt and removable glue that I use, and we made a staff, and we made a treble sign, and then I made notes out of black and white felt. Mm-hmm. And we taught rhythm, and we taught my alarm is telling me I need to give a friend's cat her insulin shot.
Oh,
but she can do it. We let the kids, we taught the rhythm, and they'd see the note. They could put the notes. We actually had them put the notes one at a time, wherever on whatever note or line or space they wanted. And then we would play it, and until we made a tune that the kids had made up themselves, the whole class. And then we all let them write the words. And they performed it. It was a holiday. We were going to do a holiday show, so it all had to do with holidays. One was about holiday food. One was about an alien coming from the planet Dookie to Earth, and all these kids wrote these incredible songs. So it was great. It's just I did it for maybe it was just a year, So they
Yeah.
brought the music back. And then I also taught for the drama and music for the Carden private schools.
Mm-hmm.
I taught kindergarten through 8th grade, drama
Wow.
and music. I taught at John Robert Powers for 13 years, all ages.
Wow.
And so I also helped start a community school in Los Angeles when my eldest son was going to go into the 7th grade. They were going to start busing, which was did not work. We were living in the San Fernando Valley, and they were going to, the kids would have to get on a bus. There would be a policeman on the bus, and they would be driven to Watts, which is, East LA from the Valley. So it'd be an hour and a half drive
Mm-hmm.
to school and from school. And don't worry, because a policeman will be at the school to meet them. And I did not want my son having to go through that. So I met with a bunch of parents, and we formed a community school, 250 students, kindergarten through 8th grade. We had accredited teachers. In fact, Frank Zappa and his wife had their kids, Moon Unit and Dweezil. Yeah. And they were terrific. I have a book of poems that Moon Unit made for me that I still have, I treasure. So I did that we had accredited teachers for the solid subjects, and then the parents did the art, and I did the music and the drama.
Wow.
And the programs, and it was just so. That nugget that my 3rd grade or 4th grade teacher planted in me really stuck.
I have to say, in one lifetime, you've lived at least 6 or 7 lifetimes. You have done so much, so impressive. And I love about you, it's like you're a woman of action. Something you don't like, I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to change that. I'm going to make this happen. So many people talk about things. You actually get it done. I love that about you.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's a couple things I forgot about. I want to go back a little bit because I find this very interesting. First of all, I want to talk about your stage work. You did some live. So what do you prefer, being live on stage, getting that instant gratification from the audience, or do you prefer being on a TV set or a movie set where you can do a couple minutes, take a break, go back to it?
Oh, I think the live is so much more invigorating and fun. And, there are times when I remember when the King Sisters were singing at Harris Club in the lounge, and my mother would lose her voice. And I was 16 years old, and I would go and I would sing backstage for her. And would do, I remember singing to, one drunk in the back of the lounge. And at the same time, it's now, 2 a.m, and the vacuum's going, cleaning up the casino. Even that, they always made it fun.
Oh, yeah.
And so there were a couple of times when the theater wasn't full. I remember my mother used to embarrass my cousin Cam to death. She would say, "Hey, everybody, come on down and let's fill in the seats up close. Let's get cozy." It didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, although the cousins worked, this is just an example, at the Disney parks a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we'd do 2 shows a night at the top of the world when Disney World first opened. And it was a big showroom like Las Vegas. It was fabulous. We'd have a dinner show and then a cocktail show. We'd do the same show, the exact same show. We'd get a standing ovation one show, and the next show, like, people were going, okay, well, yeah, okay. It was the exact same show. The chemistry, there's a synergy with the audience.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like it when it works.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty fabulous.
Well, I could say for myself, over the years, just as hobbies, I've been in bands, I've done stand-up comedy, and I have cerebral palsy. So the comedy actually led to motivational speaking. And just like you, it doesn't matter if there's half audience, a full crowd, a full
Yeah,
house. I have so much fun. Even if there's, I remember doing comedy and there was like maybe 5 people in there. I had more fun at that show than a packed house the next night. And it's funny because I had other comedians that were like, I'm not even going to go on stage, or I'm not even going to do that. I went up there and I got so many more gigs from that one show because the person in the audience was a booker. And so I said, you don't go up there and just act like, do your normal set. I
yeah,
have the same amount of energy for one person I do for 1,000 people. And that's how I've always been.
exactly.
So, but so many people had the exact opposite attitude of you and I, and they're like, I'm not going to do that. Or they get up there and just do it
Oh,
fast. And I said, you know what? Just, I don't know. I always figured that one person paid, he's going to get the show that he wants to see.
exactly.
So,
Now you say you have cerebral palsy.
yep, it's in my right hand and my right leg. So it didn't really affect anything but that. So when I was born, I was given the last rites 3 times, and they said I would never walk, never talk. But luckily, so the left side of my brain is almost completely dead. Because I wish I could find the MRI to show you. If I do,
Ah,
but the right side took over for the left because it happened right when I was born. So luckily,
that is fantastic.
yeah, all it did was affect my right hand and right leg, and it's never ever stopped me from doing anything. Like when I
Wow.
played baseball, I had the highest average in the league. Anything I wanted to do, I've always accomplished.
Oh, I love that. Did you read the story about the boy that I sang to,
Oh no,
cerebral palsy? I
oh,
tell it in my book.
yes, you know what? Yeah, I did read that, and because you do things with cerebral palsy with the foundation, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah, yeah,
did. I've done a lot of charity work, a lot of March of Dimes, Children's Miracle Network, cerebral
yeah.
palsy,
I love that.
and um, I talk about this in the books. It meant so much to me. I wanted to sing a special song to like the poster child, and I was in Florida, and I sang to a little boy who had cerebral palsy, and he was in a wheelchair. They didn't know that if he would ever walk,
Hmm.
and I sang either from Charlie Brown, "Happiness is 2 kinds of ice cream," that one, and I did "Cheer Up, Charlie" from Willy Wonka,
Yep.
and I would pick the kid and the song. When the King Cousins, when Disney World opened, the King Cousins were, up in the first year we performed there. And the promoter said, Donald Duck would like to pick you up at the airport. And I went, whoa, okay, that sounds fun. He said, well, he won't be in his costume. And golly, I wish I could remember his name. I tried to look it up and I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
Um, and this young man picked us up, and he was a little person,
Hmm.
and he had a special car made so that blocks for the pedals, and he could do things with his hands,
Yeah.
whatever. And he was Donald Duck. He was the boy I sang to, who, they didn't know if he would walk.
Wow.
And now and he was Donald Duck.
I
I
love
mean,
it.
isn't that just the best?
Yep.
And I remember him coming into the show on my birthday, bringing me a big cake and balloons as Donald Duck, because he could do it at the park. And I was so moved. I mean, you never know what little thing you do, just a smile, something that can change a person's life, that can help
Yes.
uh,
No.
improve their life.
Hmm.
And to hear stories like that, it's just I get I love my Facebook fans, because I hear stories like that all the time, and it's so moving, and it makes me appreciate all of the opportunities that I've had.
Yeah. Well, something similar happens to me when people will look at my Facebook post and I get a private message like, Rich, you make me want to get up and do things. I feel like I'm so lazy watching all the things you do, how active you are. If you can do it, I can do it. You are an inspiration to me. I get that so many times from people like, oh my God, you don't realize how much you inspire me. I said, I'm just living my life. I just love my life. I have so much fun. I don't even think about it. And the best thing for me is that happened right when I was born. So I don't
Yeah.
know any other way.
Good way.
Yes.
But what wonderful parents you must have had
Yeah. Well,
or have.
wonderful. The best. Mom and Dad, if you're watching, I love you. You're the best. But what really impresses me about my mother, she had me when she was 19 years old. At the time, the doctor said, well, he's probably going to be in a wheelchair the rest of his life, but at least he could play golf in his wheelchair, something to that effect. And luckily, my mother said, yeah, I'm getting a second and third opinion. She took me to another doctor who tore my tendon apart, did all these different operations on my leg, and now I'm able to walk. And they were going to do an operation on my hand, but it was just going to be open like this. I said, I'd rather have a fist. It's like
Yes.
grasp things instead of, unless I want to be a politician and just hello there. So my parents, I even said this, at that age, how did you know? Because I mean, most people would be like, well, the
18
doctor's
years
got to be
old?
right. Yeah. It's just, well, I had some, help from my parents, my grandparents,
Oh,
but still the fact that like at that age, she was able to say, I'm not going to listen to that doctor. I'm going to take him to somebody else. I'm going to and then luckily, which I'm so happy about, when I was little, they wanted to put me in the special class. She goes, no, I want him with the other kids. And she
yes.
never made me feel abnormal. They always,
Oh,
and so it was great. I mean, I said, I played baseball at the highest average in the league. I taught myself to catch. Actually, you're going to love this story. My favorite player growing up was Jim Rice from the Boston Red Sox. So I had to go for an operation on my leg. And when I came back, I'll send you the article. It's hilarious. It's the way it was written because it's so politically incorrect. Now they can never write like this. But so I go in there and
my
I see,
favorite kind.
yeah, me too. That's why I said I love this article. So I go in there and I see all the fourth grade classes, all my teachers. I see a newspaper journalist there. I said, what is going on? All of a sudden, there's Jim Rice ball and Jim Rice picture saying, get well soon. So there's a picture of me and says, little Richie Sayre, cerebral palsy victim, a special gift for a special boy. It's hilarious.
Oh my goodness.
But the best part is, I don't have it with me, but my current boss knew this story, and he makes he makes wallets out of baseball gloves. He found an old Jim Rice glove and made me a wallet.
Oh, is that great? Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So I didn't have as many adventures as you growing up, but I had a great life. I'm still having a great life. Still,
I think it's fabulous.
I want to get into the game shows that you did, because I love the game shows of like, what year was this, in the 70s that you were doing this?
Yeah.
Was this, because I just saw recently a documentary on Paul Lynde.
The late 60s,
Yeah.
late 60s, early 70s. Yeah.
Was this when you were doing Hollywood Squares? Was this pre-Paul Lynde?
Oh no, Paul was there.
Okay. Because I just saw a documentary on him, and I wanted to ask you some questions about that, because
I didn't know him at all. I just thought he was brilliant.
he's hilarious. I always loved his character, whatever he was playing. Like, if that was really him off stage, on stage, whatever it was. I
wish I could tell you. You go in, you do a show, and you don't really, outside of saying, hey, this is so and so and so and so, you don't really spend any time together.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even really care about that. The reason I bring him up was because I know that was one big party on the show. That's what I heard. It's like everybody was partying on that show, drinking and having fun. But the question I have for you is, because I know that they were making a big deal about that, because he was so witty in that show and he was so funny.
Yeah.
But there was rumors that there was writers. Did you see that? Were the jokes written in advance?
I don't know. I don't think so. I know as a guest, we were not given anything. And that's why Hollywood Squares was one of the most difficult shows I've ever done.
Yeah.
And I did it several times. I always said, I was the dumb, pretty square. I had not had any improv experience. I was young. I was not naturally witty or funny. I enjoyed a good joke, listening to it.
Yeah.
I can be pretty funny. My timing is good, but I also was blind as a bat. I'm so nearsighted. And now I'm actually almost blind in my right eye. So that doesn't, that macular degeneration, it doesn't
Yeah.
help. But, and remember we said boys didn't make passes at girls who wore glasses. So I wouldn't wear my glasses. And so I couldn't see. I couldn't see anything. And I would, fumble my way up the steps and get in my little square. And if I tried, like, so a writer would come in like an hour before the show, and we'd do a whole week's worth of shows in one night.
Mm-hmm.
Say, if you got a political question, you might say, Abraham Lincoln or the First Amendment or something. You might get if it's a medical question, maybe think of Dr. Kildare or whatever. But it's an hour before the show and you don't remember anything. So they didn't really give you any lines, any jokes, anything.
Okay.
So I couldn't remember and I couldn't see. So
Perfect combination.
I don't know. I mean, Rosemary, you think about, of course, Lynn. I mean, all those people that were just so witty. So, they amazed me. And it was painful for me to do that show because I felt so stupid.
Well, I guess the documentary, I just saw this the other day. The document was Buddy Hackett that was making that accusation, and then that started a little feud between he and Paul Lynde. It's just a lot of drama. And since you were there, I was not with the feud between them. I was just curious.
I never saw anybody,
Yep.
I think they were just brilliant people.
Oh yeah, I mean that.
And I could be completely wrong. Maybe that they did that in private. I don't know.
Well, to me, that was the best time for game shows. I loved that whole era. Let's Make a Deal, Match Game, Wedding, all those shows back then, and all the hosts were hilarious. The guests were hilarious.
Great.
I love. You did the other one you did was Family Feud. I think. Did you do that?
Yes.
Show? Was that with Richard Dawson?
With Richard, yeah, and he was a family friend.
Oh, he was?
I remember going and saying, okay, if I do that show, I am not going to let him kiss me.
I was just going to ask you that.
Of course I did. But he had been to our home, for parties and things. And we were, so it was the singing family, celebrity family feud.
Yep.
So it was the King family, the Lennons, Sisters Sledge, and the McCrae family. So it was Meredith and her mom and brother and whatever. And we were so bad. Richard was just roaring. I mean, I don't know how much they cut out. They had to cut a lot of us out because we were so stupid. We were just the worst. And he said, I've never seen any player be as bad as you guys.
I love it.
And we ended up winning.
So how bad were the other ones?
And everybody was like, what? Wow. Because we were, in fact, oh, wait, look. Oh, wait, do I have it there?
Wait, what is it?
Oh, no, there it is. There's
yep, all right.
Trophy, Family Feud.
Yes. I love it. That's funny. What year was this? Was it sometime in the 70s?
83.
Oh, 80s. Okay. Early 80s.
Yeah, I think it was 83. I don't know if I just had Chelsea or was pregnant with Chelsea. I'm not sure, but it was 82, 83, something like that.
Yeah. That's funny. So you were on Family Feud, Hollywood Squares. What other game shows were you on?
You Don't Say. Is that right? You Don't Say. Did I do something like that? I did a bunch. I don't remember them all.
Were you ever on the dating game?
No, but my cousins were.
Oh, really?
I never was. I would have been terrible at that. I wouldn't know what to ask. I wouldn't know. Plus, again, see, I couldn't see.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't wear my glasses. It was not cool.
It wasn't cool. Let me just ask Paul McCartney.
Class is cool. So I wouldn't have, I don't, I'm really good at, I'd be really good at like Password and,
Yeah.
shows like that. And I did some of those kinds of shows. I can't remember,
Yes.
but where I, do logic and things like that. But like, I hate Trivial Pursuit. I don't want to do that.
What's
But give me
fun?
grades and I'd be wonderful.
Well, the funny thing is, my wife and I, we do trivia nights, and we always win. But
Oh,
we play off each other because I'm great at pop culture. I'm great at TV shows, movies. She knows nothing. But then they talk about geography,
oh,
history, and that's her forte. So we make a
that's
great team.
funny.
But give me anything about pop culture, especially of the 60s, 70s,
Oh,
and 80s, and I'm there.
you're there.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's why I think one of my favorite, it's not really a game show, but it was so much fun, was back then was the Gong Show with Chuck Barris.
Oh, oh yeah. Yeah,
Did
that
you,
was fun.
did
That
you ever
was
have any experience with that show?
no,
Okay.
no. But I just can't believe that people would want to go on there,
Yeah.
and be bad. I just
You know what it is?
and they think they're great. They have such confidence and they think they're wonderful. And oh yeah, yeah.
I think anybody will just want their 15 minutes of fame. They don't care
Yes,
how they appear on TV as long as they're on TV. And I think it's even worse
exactly.
now.
Oh yeah.
Anybody with a YouTube channel is a star now. So it's just, it's gotten a lot worse.
It's scary. It was the nice thing about the olden days
Yes.
was a small pond.
Mm-hmm.
Really was a small pond, and you knew the players, you knew the actors, the singers, the musicians, and now they're just
It's oversaturated.
they're here and gone in minutes.
Yep.
I cracks me up when I think about the Hollywood Palace with Dean Martin, who hosted the show that we did with the Stones. And after our number, he comes up to us. We're all the girls, the mothers and daughters are there, and he puts his arm around us. We're all, and he's introducing the Stones, and he said, "Well, yeah," and he's rolling his eyes and going, "Yeah, they Stone. Well, they're not going to be around very long." I think it's probably on YouTube, and it's hysterical.
I gotta check that out. You know what's
It's
funny?
pretty funny.
You could attest to this maybe, because they always talk about Dean Martin, being the drunk, and they said a lot of times it was just mostly either iced tea, orange juice, or something that was like nothing. Yeah, it was all an act. He was out of the Rat Pack. He was my favorite. He was always my favorite.
Me too.
I think he had
love his music. I love his voice.
yeah.
I loved his show.
Oh yeah.
Because he didn't rehearse. He didn't want to rehearse. It was all off the cuff.
I love that.
And he was a good guy. One of the good guys.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because I've read stories about that, and I said that it was all an act, and he was such a great, and I felt so bad because after what happened to his son, he just sort of like
it killed him. Just killed him.
Yeah.
My dad played on all of his big hits. So Volare and
oh wow.
all those songs. My dad, I can hear my dad's piano in there.
Did he play just for him, or was he part of the whole Rat Pack gang?
No, he just played in the records. Just for the records.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and like Henry Mancini's Mr. Lucky.
Mm-hmm.
There's that Hammond organ in there. That's my dad that just made that song. I hear that sometimes. It's on Muzak, and do they have Muzak anymore? In the market or something. I'm in the trying to pick out a melon, and I hear Mr. Lucky, and I'll start to weep.
Yeah.
Just
wow.
Yeah.
Your parents left their footprints everywhere. I love that. I mean, so did you. Your whole family did.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of your entire family, did your children ever become involved in the entertainment business like you did?
No.
Not really?
No, we were too removed. Although my eldest was in production, and he was He did. He was head of post-production for all the Jackass productions. He wouldn't even tell me when he got the job. He said, "Mom, it's too embarrassing."
Did he work with them? Like, I mean,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. He was head of post for all their movies and TV shows and everything. And but
did they ever include him in part of the act?
no, he didn't
Okay.
want to. And my son, my second son, Paj, is a great voice actor and tried his hand in LA. Did every play in Sacramento. But he went down to LA right when the stars started doing the animation, the cartoons, the voices, which knocked down the people that were doing all the voices on a notch, which knocked everybody down. So it was really hard. Paj booked every audition he went on, but he was like me. He hated the business of the business. He couldn't do schmoozy stuff. So he's now managing a Top Golf in Arkansas.
Hey, you know,
and you know what's funny about that? He's had training and stuff, and when he said that their interviews for the jobs for the people that that serve at Top Golf, they're all improv. Their interviews are improv games.
Wow.
Which was right up Paj's alley. He's really good at that. And they said, we can teach them how to take an order and, how to do all that. But if they don't have the personality, if they can't think on their feet, that isn't what we want. We need someone that, can come up with stuff and think on their feet all the time. And I thought that was what a great way to hire people.
No, that is great. And I love that because years ago I was part of an improv group and that helped me out immensely with the comedy. Because the best thing about that is they always said, don't even think, just whatever the first thing that comes to your head, blurt it out. And then from there, we'll go from there. And I love that about improv because you don't have to really think to be funny, just say something and then it'll become funny because somebody else will feed off of that and you just keep going back.
Don't try to be funny.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
it's the yes and.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a long time to learn that. I still am not that good at it. Give me a script.
Well, I mean, look at Lucille Ball. I mean, all those years she couldn't do it at all.
No, I know. I mean, that's when I had trouble with Bill Cosby, and that's in the book too. But I'm not going to tell anybody because they have to read it.
I'm telling you, you got to buy this book. We're gonna when we finish the interview, we're gonna plug this like crazy because it's such a great book. You have so many great stories. We only covered a couple of the stories. I mean, there's so many things in this book. You got to buy it. Tina, you are great, and I'm definitely. I love what you said about this, and I'm in complete agreement with you. You stated that happiness is a choice, and I agree with you 1,000%.
I can tell, Rich. Yes. That was the choice that you made. That's what you make.
Yes. Because I always say to people, it's like when somebody says, "Oh, I had a tough life." I mean, I know people. I always say, I know people that had tougher things happen, but they chose not to go down that path. You're using that as an excuse.
Yes.
So I love that you said that.
Yeah, I'm a definite half full. I get teased a lot, Pollyanna, and put on the rose-colored glasses, and fiddle-dee-dee, tomorrow's another day. But I really do. Some people I know will wake up grumpy until something changes. I wake up happy unless something changes.
No, I am exactly the same way. Everybody always says the same thing to me. Are you ever in a bad mood? I can never picture you angry. And I said, for the most part, this is me. I mean, like you said earlier, about maybe 2 hours ago, you said, Rich, we all have our down times. And of course, everybody does. But I never let it get to me because I make that choice like, you know what? I can get over this. It's not the end of the world. And I'll give you an example. This is what I always use. My brother's wife had pancreatic cancer for almost 3 years. She just died. And whenever somebody says something like, "Oh, I can't believe they're out of this at the store," I'm like, if this is the biggest problem of your day, I said, I bet you my brother's wife was named Lean. I said, I bet you Lean wishes she had your problem. I bet you she wishes, they were only out of like the soda at the grocery store.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you gotta. I always try to like distance myself and look outside the box and say, you know what, my life is pretty good. I have nothing to
Yes.
complain about. And I used to laugh years ago, not really anymore, but when I was little, people would say, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" I said, "Cerebral palsy." "Oh, I'm sorry." I said, "For what? There's nothing to be sorry about. This has not affected me at all." I mean, I can give you example after example. I've given you some of them. Like I said, stand-up comedy,
Oh,
motivational speaking. I'm doing this radio / podcast / YouTube channel. I'm
that's
I'm
so
I'm loving
wonderful.
life.
I can tell. That's great. That's great.
Well, Tina, before we go, so I know we talked for about 2.5 hours, and I could talk to you probably for
Oh my
another 2.5
goodness.
hours. Is there anything that I left out that you want to go over?
Um, no, not really. Oh, Daisy.
I guess Daisy
Doing?
disagrees with that. Tell them
Daisy.
about me.
I know. Come here. Okay, come here. You want to see Daisy? Okay, well, come here, Daisy. Come here. Come here. Oh, no, she's more interested in who's at the door. I think somebody's at the door. No, you're in the back of the computer, Daisy. You got to come over on this side.
Come
Oh,
on, Daisy.
she's a little blonde cocker and she's adorable. But she gets very excited if she hears somebody at the door.
Oh yeah.
No, I think pretty much we've covered it all.
Yep.
Um,
And there's a lot more in the book that you have to buy the book and read.
to me, there's nothing more important in the world than family and my faith and my friends. I mean, I am grateful every day for all the good and the bad too. I remember telling, and I talk about this in the book, Daisy, stop. Um, and I told my ex-husband this. I said, thank you, because you carved me out so deeply that I'm able to hold so much more love and compassion. And so I'm grateful for that. It's crazy, but I think it's true. If we learn from the hard times and we survive and we become stronger and better people, and yeah.
No, I agree with you. I love that because, like, as I said, when people, you could have the same thing could happen to two people. One person will go down one road, another person will go down another road. It's a choice you make. You don't have to use that as an excuse. You don't have to be a victim. You can, pull your pants up and say, you know what? I'm not going to let this define who I am.
That's what I keep saying. Okay, I'm going to put on my big girl panties now.
Yes, exactly. Don't pull them off during a song while
That's
Dad's
right.
singing. Well, I do have one last thing I want to talk to you about, because I mentioned it earlier, and I said you said years ago you met Tom Jones, and there was one thing he did, and ever since then you've emulated. What happened with Tom Jones?
It really changed my life. It was his premiere of his television series, and my brother-in-law Jim Green was the liaison between ABC and his show, and he set up this big opening night party at the candy store in Hollywood, and my sister couldn't go, so Jim invited me to be his escort, and we were waiting. The party was going on in the ballroom in the back, and we were waiting for Tom to come in with his entourage. So we were waiting in the bar area where they were going to come in, and he came in, and Jim greeted him and said, "Oh, I'd like you to meet my sister-in-law. This is Tina Cole." And for, I don't know if it was 2 seconds, 5 seconds, he took my hand in his, both of his, and he looked me straight in the eye with this big smile, and he said, "It is such a pleasure to meet you." he wasn't looking around the room like most people would be going, oh yeah, nice to meet you too, and heading off. For whatever those few seconds, I was the only person in the room. Mm. And I was so impressed by that. I thought, by golly, that's the way I want to treat every human being I meet. I will do it at the drive-through. It's amazing. You drive through and and they're looking around, and when you go, when you look at them and you smile and you ask them a question or you say thank you sincerely, it's like all of a sudden they go, oh, and it just for a second it changes everything. And you think, and they're going to be, now the next person they meet, they're going to be more engaged.
I love that.
It's like, ripples, in the water. And it just, it really did affect my life so much for the better. Yep. And yeah, he really is a hero.
Yeah. I never met him. I saw him in concert several times. He's such a fun entertainer. He puts on a great show.
Yes. His energy. Yeah, he's just great.
And what he did for you brings it back to the beginning of the conversation that we had, because as I said, I was walking around Chiller Convention and my friend's like, oh my God, you got to meet Tina. She is the nicest person in the world. She is so friendly. I went over there, just like you said with Tom Jones. It was almost getting ready to wrap up. I was pretty much the only person in the room to you. You and I were talking. I said, you know what, Tina, I need to have you on my show. This is going to be great. And you got Debbie, and she came over. She goes, here's the email. And then we said, just wait until after the holidays. I said, yeah, no problem at all. And here we are 2.5 hours later. I love it.
Wonderful.
I love it.
It's been such a pleasure.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I had so much fun. Not only doing an interview with you, but doing the research and finding out more about your life. I never would have known any of this if it wasn't for you and your book. And I'm going to say again, after you're done watching this interview, actually, besides Amazon, where else can people find this if they want to buy it?
Oh my goodness. Well, Amazon, you can actually get it at Barnes and Noble online.
Okay.
Bear Manor, the publisher. I also just not too long ago, the Audible came out.
Oh, yes.
I'm narrating it. And I even have people that have said, oh, I read it, but I wanted to get your Audible. And because I'm telling the stories, I even sing a little bit in it. And you don't get the pictures, unfortunately. But I'm really thrilled that people are enjoying my story.
Oh, yeah. That we definitely are. So after this book, what's next for you?
I don't know. People said, why did you write another book? And I went, oh, yeah, right. My son Balney said, yeah, why don't you do a book about all the times that you tried to kill us? Automobile or skiing or something. I said, oh, yeah, that would go over well.
It's going to be thicker than War and Peace.
I don't know at this point. I am on the board of directors for a wonderful community theater group in Lincoln, the Lincoln Theater Company. It's about maybe a half an hour from Sacramento. And I do a cabaret with them once a year, so I get to sing, and that's kind of fun. I still want to do Hallmark. I still could be a great grandma.
Oh my God, please, if somebody's watching this, hire her immediately. I want to see Grandma Cole.
Right. That's right. Yeah, right. So I don't know. I'm enjoying my grandkids. I'm just loving every minute of it.
You're just loving and enjoying life.
Yes.
I love it. So actually, let me talk about the book. How long did it actually take you to write the whole book? Like, how many drafts did you actually do? See, I know you said writing a grocery list is difficult for you. So I can imagine how long it took you to write the book.
Yeah, well, it was about 5 years.
Wow.
And it might have been, I got stuck. I really got stuck for over a year. So maybe 7. I don't know. With the ending of my second marriage was really, really difficult. And there was a point where, when I said, I feel gratitude because I was carved out so deeply.
Yeah.
And I wrote, and finally in the book, I just said, there are some things that are too painful to talk about. You don't want to share those things.
Yeah.
And I said, just suffice it to say that the next 2 years were hell. And so that I got stuck there until I could get beyond that.
Yeah.
But once I had a publisher, it is not self-published. I have a publisher, and Bear Manor. And once I had that, it was maybe a year.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, but it wasn't easy for me.
Yep.
And I'm so particular about choice of words.
Mhm.
So that part was no, it doesn't sound right. One sentence. I remember working on a sentence for like an hour. It just didn't sit right. So I'm hoping, that people are enjoying it, and it really tickles me.
People are definitely enjoying it, and we're very, very happy. I don't care if it took 7 years or 70 years. It was well worth the wait.
Thank you.
And I have to say this before you go. Everyone we talked about, and I love this message that you have been saying throughout this whole interview. Everyone has their ups and downs, but I love the fact that you chose to live a happy life, not afraid to take any risks, always full of life. And as I said before, I know 20-year-olds that wouldn't be able to keep up with you.
I'm still going to go skydiving. That's on my bucket list.
You know what? I got to send you a video. I did a couple years ago. I did skydiving, but I was the stand-up skydiver. I was doing I have it in video. I was doing my stand-up comedian act as I was going down, and the guy, it was tandem. So the guy in the back was going, oh, he's like going like this, making fun of me the whole time. I had no idea. I'm just doing my act in the air.
Oh, that's funny.
I loved it.
That's still on my bucket list, by golly.
It is. I did it twice. It's the best feeling in the world. The first time you get that free fall, then when the chute comes up, you just float peacefully down to the ground.
I want to do that.
And then luckily the guy says, well, if you want to take the reins. So I was spinning us around. He goes, loco. He was laughing.
Oh, that's great.
He goes, you're some kind of daredevil. What's going on? I said, yes, I am. Well, I have to say, Tina, you're an inspiration to all. Thank you very much for sharing your happiness with everyone here in the Claus Corner. I loved having this show. And you know what? Please, anytime you're doing, even if you're not doing anything, just come back. I'd love to have you on the show anytime.
I would love to, Rich. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. You're the best.
What a delight.
The feeling is definitely mutual.
Thank you.
That wraps up the latest episode of the Claus Corner. A huge thanks goes out to singer, actress, and author, and so much more, Tina Cole, for taking time out of her extremely busy schedule to be a guest on my show. I also need to thank editor extraordinaire John Bristol of Elmwood Productions for always doing a superb job editing this show each and every week and making it available to all on YouTube. I am also extremely grateful to Joseph Timothy Quirk and Rob Bull for all they do to make my show available on several Connecticut radio stations, as well as Spotify, iTunes, Audible, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Thank you both very, very much. And lastly, but definitely not least, I need to thank you, the viewer, for always tuning in. Enjoy your day, everyone.
Suckers! All of a sudden I hear, brim, brim.
What's a diaphragm again?
Ha! We caught one.
They're supposed to be weird.
Oh, yeah, no. If you say so.
I've always wanted to be in a movie.
Waiting around for